Hey everybody, this is Palmer, hosting the As Yet Untitled podcast with my good buddy Dave.
Hello.
Hey Dave, how's it going, man?
Very well.
I'm broadcasting here from good old Dayton, Ohio.
Podcasting, sir. But yes.
Oh, broadcast. What did I say? Broadcasting?
Yeah. And
I got broads. I got broads on the mind. Broads on the mind. No.
And I'm
podcasting from Dayton, Ohio. Yeah.
And I'm doing so as well, simultaneously, but across the country a little bit from Northfield, Minnesota.
Northfield, Minnesota. Don't you know? Is that a don't you know state?
I mean, pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Palmer and I are both from Northeast Ohio. So,
yeah, isn't that crazy? We started out in this like teeny tiny town. It's about 7,500 people when it's wet.
I never heard that before.
I totally made that up on the spot. It fit though, right?
Because
it's just this tiny town, right?
Yeah.
So it's about 7,500 people, about 20 minutes southwest of Akron, for reference there. And graduated with like 85 people. That's how small it is.
It was I remember, I feel like I could be wrong about this, but I think it was technically population-wise a village at some point when I was younger. Or is that just because they called it exempted village or something like that?
It's still an exempted village, with that, which that has to do with it's something that when we became a state, when Ohio became a state, you got some special exemption in the taxes that once you hit a certain population, you could change it. I'm probably totally butchering this, but we talked about it in my school finance class. But like the towns had a chance to like not switch over, and then they would stay exempted. So that's where the exempted village comes from. But I mean, we're definitely like tiny, like less than 10,000 people, tiny. And we really didn't. You had already graduated high school because you graduated 2 years ahead of me.
Oh, okay. So were we in high school at the same time ever? We would have been.
Yeah, like when I was a freshman, you were a junior. Is that right?
Oh man, so you were. And that was a small school, so you would have been possibly like have seen posters for those movies I was making. And stuff.
Yeah. No, I remember. I remember.
Funny. I didn't realize that.
My freshman year. During the morning announcements, because we had like the video morning announcements. Yes. You had it was close to Halloween, and you had the commercial that played on the morning announcements.
Yeah.
And we had to pre-order. So I remember pre-ordering.
You pre-ordered that?
Oh, I pre-ordered. And then I remember
dropped it
like
off to your house. I mean, I was so scared of seeing like people. That was my thing, is I dropped them off, I think, on Halloween, but I just like a paper boy. But I didn't.
No,
I didn't throw them,
because this is what you did. You like you had a bunch at the school and we could pick them up, and or maybe you took the pre-orders at the school, but I remember paying for it, and I was like, I'm really excited for this, and you were like, oh yeah, I hope you like it. And we didn't even know each other then.
Yeah.
But we had a Halloween party with the like group of friends that I was running around with then, and that's what we watched. We watched your movie, like, yeah.
So I meant just for that blows my mind. So, but also for anyone that might hear this someday, when I was a teenager, the Crow came out starring Brandon Lee, and I was a big fan of Bruce Lee and thus Brandon Lee, and then became obsessed with the graphic novel in which that was based, so much so that I made my own home video version of it with my buddy, and we made it available to our high school in this way, as Palmer was just mentioning. And then
you like,
God, where to go from there? But
well, you did the like school version that was okay to sell at the school, and then you like did the updated version that wasn't okay to sell at the school. And I got that one too. But by that point in time, because you made that after you were out of high school, right?
Yeah, I finished. So the first version, I remember giving people the orders on Halloween of 1995, and then by Halloween of 1998 is when I had finished kind of my reworked version, taking the best bits of that and learning a little bit more about movie making, and getting old enough to put in all of the gritty shit that goes on in that book.
Yeah. I just remember like oh man, like, because we were friends definitely by that point, because I remember getting the copy of the updated version and like being, so like you graduated, and then it was the summer between my junior and senior year. At that point, I was hanging out with the cabin people. I was going out to the cabin.
We should probably explain what that is too, I guess.
Yeah.
At least briefly.
Which was just like this, so in our town, you either like drank on the weekends or you didn't drink, and just about everybody drank, except for this like group of friends that I ended up finding, like my first group of friends that I totally did that scene, and I partied out, and I did not like what I was becoming. And it was like this perfect time in between my junior and senior year that I started hanging out with this group of people at this small cabin, literally in the middle of a cow pasture. Because if you know that part of Ohio, that's pretty much all there is. There's more cow pasture than anything else. And there's this small little like 8x10 cabin that we would go out to on Friday nights and play music and sit around a fire and BS and just like talk about everything. And just about everybody had just graduated. Like David already graduated, and then there were like the major contingent of the cabin kids had just graduated. And then I was in this like, there was even a couple that were younger than me, but I was just moving into my senior year. And yeah, that's when we really, and I remember even thinking like, oh my gosh, Dave Ullman like goes out there and like
Jesus,
he made the Crow.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is
like
gonna be like
that guy's got
there was
problems.
so many like there was so many like creative people in that group, and it was just so intimidating. And really we're this like group of people that I think that's every clique in high school though, where you're like,
if you're not
you're
in
like,
it.
nobody knows about us, or we're just like on the outskirts. But then when you're outside of it, it's like, oh, everybody knows about that group of people or these groups of people. And yeah, to really be included in that creativity and everything. And that really, we became really good friends through the cabin. I think that's really where it started to take off. And I remember thinking like everybody in that group was making something. They were either learning how to like play instruments, or you guys were starting on the Steve album, which was another one
that was actually
like,
post cabin.
Yeah,
that was kind of we didn't have because the cabin was this like standing date on Fridays. You didn't have to call around and see where your buddies were going to be. You knew that everybody's going to eventually end up out there. So if you just went there, you'd see folks. But I think after maybe like a year or two, I feel like maybe only 1 year, it was in 1999-ish, where the guy, there were two guys that were, one in particular was not a part of not initially a part of the group of friends. He had kind of originated the thing. He had built it. And then there's a whole nother version of the story where it's like we all descended on this guy's like, his
that's really true.
What were you call that? Like a respite or something. And we kind of came in and took it over. And so hopefully he didn't feel that way, but at a certain point he's like, I'm going to stop coming out here and you guys should too. And then ever since then, I think that group of people to some extent or another have tried to find ways of keeping in touch and making, at least particularly in my case, making things together. And that's a big part of what we're doing right now, I think, too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, and I mean, what's funny is, all those cabin kids, and we talked about this the last time we hung out a couple weeks ago, where it's like we can go 2 years and not really touch base and not really talk, like maybe random text messages or phone conversations every now and then. But then you get like face to face, and it's like none of that. I mean, they say that's like, I guess that's kind of a cliche, like true friends, is like, it's, you never feel the time apart when you're together.
Oh yeah. That's nice.
You know what I mean? So like, but through that's where I was like, I kept seeing like all this creation and all this creativity. And I was like, man, I want to get in on this. And I didn't play instruments. I sang poorly.
Not that poorly. I've heard a lot of recordings from the time. And I eventually went on to be, at least a semi-professional musician, and I did not sing well either. Nobody particularly sang well, but
that's probably more fair. Yeah,
we all encouraged each other, and it was great fun to do. But I always enjoyed your singing.
But at the time, now this is the long walk for a short drink, because now we're coming right back to The Crow. So you were still working. You were working on.
Oh, that's right.
You needed to get time. You needed to get access to
better editing equipment. Yeah.
Yeah, equipment that you could get this off the ground and get this done. And through that's how you got the job at the public access channel.
Yeah, I would go in there to edit, and I had so much to do that I got to a point where they knew me, and then I asked if I could start coming in like right before they closed, and then just work through the night, and then eventually just being around, because I would do that at least like 5 days a week, I guess, and it was a tiny staff. There was an opening, and I don't remember if I might have just asked offhand, like, could I apply, or I don't know, but they knew me, and they knew I was capable of doing things, and not, they trusted me enough to have me work there overnight, and they were just like, yes. And then I had that job. It wasn't my first job. My first job was at a video store, like all movie geeks, but that was my second job.
Awesome.
So the way that cable access centers work is that the money comes from some kind of tax for the cities and stuff, and that town, Wadsworth, had their own cable that was much more competitive in rates to Time Warner, and that was kind of interesting. But they had this wonderful facility, and anybody could kind of go in there and make. They still do. I shouldn't say they did. They still do, and you could go in there and make your show whatever you want it to be, so long as it wasn't a for-profit type thing.
That was like the greatest part about that, is like you just had to go in with an idea, and like they would make that idea happen, which was I thought was awesome. Like you'd just be like, I just want to do a show about this. Okay, so we'll have staff here. We'll get you on the schedule. Like we'll hammer it out. Like kind of like what we're doing with the podcast, where it could grow as an organic thing. But I remember asking you, I was like, when I found out about all that, I was like, oh, can I do a show? And you were like, yeah, come on out. We'll do a show. We'll figure it out. What would you want to do? And I was like, and I remember again, like the name came first, Palmer's Picks. That's what it's going to be.
Yes. Oh,
so like, show. Oh man. So that was like our first like major, just us project, right? Was Palmer's Picks. So,
because I would have it could have been anybody off the street. And at the time I didn't know you all that well, but that's been a kind of a hallmark or sort of a constant in my life, is getting close to people through making stuff together.
So that's what we did. Palmer's Picks Me, and that was a great show. So I worked at the time, like all video geeks, I had a job at a video store. I worked for Hollywood Video. I was the youngest key holder in the company at the time. I was 17 years old.
Like nationwide, or
yeah, like in my district manager, he like came to me, and when they gave me my keys, they were like, you're the youngest we've ever made a key holder, and right now you're the youngest key holder, like any kind of management in the company, because I was only 17 years old, and I had just turned 17. So,
oh my god.
But I had this resource where I could rent as many old movies as I wanted to. So
couldn't be new releases. Oh, I forgot that. Yeah.
I had to ask permission for new releases. Yeah. Like my boss was pretty cool about, like, if I had to rent a new release, my boss was pretty cool about letting me do that. But I could get any of the catalog movies, as many, and I could rent stacks at a time if I wanted to.
Oh wow.
And that's kind of is what organically led to the idea of Palmer's Picks, where we weren't going to review new movies. We would bring on a guest. That was like the crucial part of Palmer's Picks. And the guest would pick 3 of their favorite movies, and then I would watch
titles.
Those. Yeah, like total library titles, yeah,
or free for you.
And then I would watch those, and then we would talk about them when they would come on. And if I liked them, I would deem them a Palmer's pick, and if not, they weren't a Palmer's pick. more times than not, they ended up being Palmer's picks. There was a few that did not, but
some notable exceptions.
yeah. But man, that was a fun time, and I think that really solidified our friendship, like through the creation of that show.
And I would come on every so often for what we termed like a special ed show, whether it was a themed show like we did the Kevin Smith's Jersey trilogy, which all that existed at the time were the 3 of his first films. I remember we did 3 Mel Brooks movies.
Oh, Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks.
I'm trying to remember. Oh, we did several because it was 1999 and Star Wars came out, so we did a kind of a pre and post episode 1 kind of roundtable type thing.
I would be interested to go back and talk about episode 1 or to watch that episode about episode 1 and see like what our feelings were about it now that, because I pretend like they don't exist. That
it's I've seen the episodes, not the Star Wars episodes, but the Palmer's Picks episodes in the last year. Last summer around this time I was digitizing them, and so I watched the run, and I really enjoyed the whole thing, honestly, because it was also just most all of our close friends were on as a guest at some point, and I think there were at least like 30 shows or close to that. But yeah, there was that, and then when we were trying to kind of recruit guests from the community that could see the show in Wadsworth, and that just never quite. I wonder what it would be like nowadays. It was because the internet wasn't, and social media and stuff, there wasn't ways to get traction in the same way there is now.
I mean, I could just imagine just even with what a difference Facebook would have made for Palmer's Picks. I think it would have been a lot easier to solicit because, we used our friends out of necessity. The guest was like the
story
linchpin
of my life from when I was a kid, forcing my siblings into my little movies to right now.
We needed those guests, and we knew our friends were willing, like they had no problems. Luckily, they were so used to having cameras in their faces in one form or another, and they all had. And what was great was it was a really eclectic, like a diverse selection of films that were brought on through our friends. You would have thought it would have been the same 3 movies over and over and over again.
Yeah,
but
it's surprising it wasn't. Because I think because of the way that it was set up with like your favorite movies, and I don't even know how aware folks were of other people's, because I don't, we didn't live in Wadsworth. I don't think our friends were watching the show.
No,
they would have only seen their own. Well, even that. Eventually, we gave them copies, but I don't think there was any awareness of other people's picks.
Yeah, which was great. I don't think there was ever. There may be a couple times I think somebody would say, "Oh, I want to do this," and I'd be like, "Oh, we already did that one." Oh, okay, no problem. And even we did that like one random like audio version for Sarah Starr, like at her. Was that Sarah Starr?
Or it was also. Kevin is his name.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
And he had good picks. I have that.
And we did his.
That's going to be an addendum to the. That's going to happen.
Yeah, I like that. Like my creative process is weird because I always am inspired. So that inspires me to like create something. I'll find something that I like and I'm like, oh, let's do that. And, like WPLMR, the original like iterations of those I was inspired by like your guys' mix CDs, and
oh wow,
I always wanted to like take it up a notch, so that like I had grown up listening to radio, and I thought, well, let's do like a radio style mix CD. Like, how cool would that be? And I kind of took some inspiration from. I really like the Queens of the Stone Age album, Songs for the Deaf, because that's like it's a concept album that takes place like over a road trip. So he's like turning the dial, like in between the songs, he turns the dial, and like you hear different like radio broadcasters, and then it will cut into one of their songs. But I like hear inspiration, and then that drives me on. All right, how can I build on that? And then I'm really weird about names. Like I've always like started with the name of something or the logo for that, and I'm like, okay, what Like what would fit into that name or that logo or that whatever, that's always like the first, it's weird. That's like the first thing I figure out typically, but that's just my own creative process.
That makes
sense. Have you seen, what's the name of that movie? There was a movie that came out not too long ago, and it was literally inspired by the video covers that he was never allowed to rent when he was a kid. Like,
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, like the whole movie is like he would go to the video store and he would just walk through the horror section, and he was never allowed to rent any of those movies. So he just imagined, just based on the cover, like what that movie was about. And I have to see if I can find the name of this movie.
I gotta know. That sounds so great.
It's so good. And like I watched the movie and it's like so it's disturbingly quiet, like it's like really low key and really let me see if I can find this.
Is it called VHS? I've seen that cover.
No, I've watched those. Those are great. Actually all three of those I really liked. And let's see here.
This will be the second thing I write down to check out.
Inspired. What was the first thing already?
The Queens of the Stone Age. I was very fascinated by that, and I've always been a little bit. I've been curious about that band, and because of all these podcasts I listen to, I hear these various people talk about their life and their work in a really fun way that makes me want to look into their work. But I hear that from so many different people that I really need some kind of extra push to follow through. So, but that's kind of could be a nice thing about this is that, might not get to check everything out, but we can report back on things that kind of come up and are recommended.
Wasn't allowed to rent. It was on. No. Oh man, it's so good. So many awesome like box arts came up.
I mean, from my brain retains very specific things that I don't feel like I really control, and my somewhat encyclopedic knowledge of movies, at least from a certain, say maybe, I don't know, the early '80s through the late '90s, especially, almost all of that comes from staring at box art in video stores. Because even before I worked in one, I was just always obsessed with that. And when they started to change the artwork in, I'd say, the mid to late 90s to this really kind of just cut and paste people's faces and stuff, and it wasn't at all the evocative type of covers that I'm sure this movie was inspired by. It was a big bummer. But I always picture the video box art when certain movies come to mind. And I even buy them for that box art to this day.
Well, I mean, like some of it was just so great. Like, did you finish the Canon Films documentary?
Yes. Oh, I love that.
I mean, they made movies just based on like the promo poster, right? Like they had nothing, but they were like, I'll just put this together. And they're like, this is our movie. And they would sell the distribution to that and then write the script. I mean, that's so awesome.
That was like Ed Wood. There's a scene in Ed Wood where the guy, where he's going in there and he trying to get a job, and the guy's like, well, here, I'll give you this. And he's like, is there a script? He's like, no, there's a poster. It's like for, what it turned out to be Glenn or Glenda. But I wrote down just a who, what, when. Oh, what is it?
It's Beyond the Black Rainbow. That's what it's called.
Ooh.
Here, hang on. Let me share.
Rainbow.
Share screen. Can you see that?
Oh yeah, I think so. Oh yeah.
The IMDb page. So like that, look at the cover. Like, doesn't that look like an 80s horror movie cover? And just
yeah. That reminds me for some reason of that movie Cube, which I've never seen, but something about
Cube's good. Cube. That's it.
Reminds me of it.
Let me find the Wikipedia for this, because he talks about how plot, cast, development. As a child, the director frequented a video store named Video Addict During these trips, he would browse the horror film section, looking at the boxes, although he was not allowed to watch such films. During such times, he would instead imagine what the film was. He would later reflect upon his experience when making Black Rainbow, where one of his goals was to create a film that is sort of an imagining of an old film that doesn't exist. So it's kind of like this throwback to what he imagined these movies that never existed. Like, that's just crazy.
Oh, I mean, that sounds
what a great filmmaking process.
Yeah. I wonder, I'd be curious watching it if like stuff kind of comes to mind of, I'm sure I saw a lot of the same boxes. So
absolutely. Oh, I'm sure. Like, I don't know. I love stuff like that. Like, I love just like focusing on that and like not fitting to that, but just that, letting that inspire like the directions that things go. So that here's the long walk for the short drink that I always do. So one of the things that I've been rolling around is like spoilers abound for a name.
Oh yeah.
Like, just cause I know we're not going to like, we're just going to talk, we're just going to ruin everything for everyone. So, and I'm okay with that. Like, I don't give a shit.
Spoilers abound. I'm writing that down.
Spoilers abound, possibly. I like that.
Another thing too, like with the names that just occurred to me is that if it's not the name of the show, it could be a name of segments. Of
segments, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Into certain segments.
Absolutely. But yeah, this is gonna be great, man.
I'm just excited to be talking.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's so much to talk about, and just like. Good stuff.
I wrote down, I was sitting today and I wrote down who, what, when, where, and why. And I thought if we could somehow address those questions, not with definitive answers, that would be all we'd need to cover to make it so that whatever we discuss could be something.
Yeah.
You've seen, I don't know, there are a lot of things I feel like you'll be able to ask me if I've seen and I won't. And I think that'll be fun and give me things I can go, check out and then come back to you at. But I feel like we could get into really specific topics for shows, but I think a lot of it too might be fun to some extent, or at least a portion of it to just be like, hey, what'd you do last week? Or, or not what you do, but like, what, I don't know, kind of let things evolve naturally with the idea that you bring a couple things like, oh, I want to talk about this because I'm listening to Salem's Lot or whatever,
Oh man, how's that going, by the way?
Pretty good. I mean, I enjoyed it. I really like the guy reading it, but I don't know his name because what I do is I rip them to the iTunes so I can put them on my phone. I get them from the library or something and do that. So I don't think I have the guy's name, but I like this performer a lot. And when I did his Carrie, it was read by Sissy Spacek, so that was really fun.
Oh, that one was great. I've listened to that version with Sissy Spacek because she does a great job of. I mean, she played that character.
Yeah, that's so cool. So I try to cherry pick like that when I can for these books that have been around a while to try to find, especially if there's kind of movie time, because I love to listen to the book and then watch the movie and have a text version around to reference and stuff. But
yeah, and there's two versions of Salem's Lot on like. Both of them were made for TV, I think. Wasn't Donald Sutherland's in one of them, I think. And I think they did an update, or maybe I'm thinking of the Shining. They did that updated version that was supposed to be true to Stephen King's novel.
I know there's one with Rob Lowe in it, and I don't know who's in the one from the 70s. But that one just came in from Netflix today on DVD for me, the one from the 70s.
Of Salem's Lot.
Yeah, and I saw the other one at my library with Rob Lowe, but I was like, I don't want to see that one first. I love also the period of a lot of these things, or just to kind of be immersed in the period. So the idea that the film came from that time is appealing to me as well.
Yeah, I'm almost 100%. That's Donald Sutherland.
It's General Snow. What do they call him in Hunger Games? It's something Snow.
President Snow.
President Snow. Yes.
Donald Sutherland is just so amazing. David Soul, James Mason.
Oh, James Mason, yeah. From like Lolita, and that's who I know from. And he did a version of Frankenstein. He played this weird flamboyant character that's not in any other cinematic iteration.
It is not. There is no Donald Sutherland in there. I thought there was.
Probably a dude that seems like Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
A Donald Sutherland type.
That story is just so brutal. It's like unforgivingly brutal.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about part of what got me into starting with at the beginning of the catalog was reading or listening to Danse Macabre, which is that study in horror where I had always heard it referred to as he brings everything back to the archetypes of Dracula and Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which are 3 stories and just kind of topics and films based on those that I love so much that I've made, versions of my own when I was a kid, 8-year-old kid, like making 2 versions of Frankenstein and 2 versions of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in the span of like 2 months. But so I was very interested in that. And then in that, he had written a few of those books like Carrie and Salem's Lot and maybe The Shining too. So he would reference other horror and stuff, but he would often mention his own books. Oh, and then I read on writing. So I'd heard him talk about a lot of these or write about these early works. And so I was really primed to dive in. And he talked about Salem's Lot as being, I hope I get this right. It's like if Dracula happened in 1975 in like New England, but also some kind of like Stepford wife or the Stepford sort of setting. That part I'm getting wrong.
No, I think that's I've listened to Danse Macabre and On Writing, and that's pretty accurate. I love how he writes. A lot of the times he's like, "What if this happened here?" Or what if like The Stand he equates to being his like Lord of the Rings, where it's like this like or The Hobbit, where it's this like cross country journey of this fellowship and what happens to them and. So that comparison I think is pretty. I think I even remember him making that comparison. Like, what if Dracula happened now? I just remember I've tried to listen to that twice, and I probably was not in the greatest state of mind either time. Probably an altered state of mind both times. So I remember making it through, but nothing really stuck. Like I remember making it so far, and then I just remember it being so remorseless. Like it's just so creepy and kids die. Stephen King does it like has no problems breaking the like no kids, no old people rule.
Right.
Which I guess in film they have to follow that a little. They're a little more stringent when you're writing a novel. You don't have to be. So he does not pull any punches on that. Pet Sematary being a great example of that.
I don't. Spoilers abound. What was it? Spoilers.
Spoilers abound. Yep.
Is that what it is? Spoilers abound.
You never seen Pet Sematary? You had to have seen the movie version of Pet Sematary.
I can picture the video box. The video box plain as day, particularly in Dairy Mart. I think it's Dairy Mart. It was on the outskirts of Richmond. And I always thought I was too young to know any better. Just based on the eyes of the person on the box, I always thought that was Mark Hamill. I always thought that was Luke Skywalker. I know it's not.
It does look like Mark Hamill, though. I'll totally give you that.
Like from Empire. Man. Like he looks like he's on Dagobah or something.
Yeah. I'm right there with you.
I'd seen The Shining because of Kubrick. I had seen Carrie at some point later in life, like 18 or something. No, like early 20s when I moved down to, I remember moving to North Carolina and like not having a job and stuff at first. And so renting certain movies. And I remember that's when I rented Carrie. That's when I rented Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh,
And I had not seen them before. And I actually think about that one a lot, but I am I'm still a little scared of it. So I haven't gone back to it. But I think about that one a lot. Like, it's going to happen.
There's this amazing Jimmy Kimmel segment where they were going down to South Carolina and they wanted to do an ad. Like they had a drawing for a local business where he would make the ad, the TV commercial for the local business. and this video store ended up winning. And he brought Matthew McConaughey with him to make the commercial. They made like 3 commercials for this video store. And in one of the commercials, they bring up Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which has Matthew McConaughey
and Renee Zellweger, right?
And Renee Zellweger. He's like, if I wanted to get this on VHS, I could come right here to this video store. And it's amazing. It's so good. And he's like holding the box art and like, oh, it's so good. But
that's very cool. Yeah, so somehow I'd seen almost I just was not familiar personally with any of the movies or books. And so I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And it has been so far. I'm pretty early in the process.
Awesome. That's so good. You have to, when you start like doing the Stephen King movies, I'm going to tell you Maximum Overdrive is like, this is going to make Maximum Overdrive better. Is like, he made Maximum Overdrive. It's like the first one he directed that Stephen King himself directed.
I didn't know he did that.
And he was like in the height of his coke days when he directed it. And it makes the movie like I haven't even watched it in probably a decade, but just knowing that, it made my memories of that movie better. And it was already like, it was one of those ones where, you know, I saw that when I was a kid and it kind of stuck with me a little bit because it's so, like the imagery in that is so effective. But yeah, just learning that was at the height of his coke days, I was just like, oh man, I gotta watch that movie again because that's awesome. So
I think part of what I was primed too is I don't remember why. I'm trying to remember why I did this, and I can't quite remember. But last year I did. I started at the beginning with John Carpenter, and I knew some of his movies, but not as many as you might think.
Yeah,
and I really I hated his first movie, The Star something. I don't remember what it was. It's hard to watch, but then like you get I think the Assault at Precinct 13 all the way through They Live. I just loved them all, and had never seen a lot of them. Like I'd never seen The Thing.
Yeah, I just watched that the whole way through recently.
That's tough for me. Some of the kinds of grossness in that movie are not for me, but
yeah.
It was really cool. I had always been curious about, I want to say it's Prince of Darkness. He did it after Big Trouble in Little China, but before They Live. It's like 1987. Yeah. And I loved Big Trouble, and I still love Big Trouble in Little China so much. And a lot of the Asian actors from that movie are in Prince of Darkness. It's like Egg Shen and Wang. I fucking loved Wang as a kid. Oh, sorry. I did. When I was a kid, I didn't, I was a real like Luke Skywalker instead of Han kind of kid. I identified with one more than the other. And so I liked Wang, the character of Wang. I liked the character Wang.
We know you liked Wang.
Instead, because he was the martial arts guy or whatever. And now I feel, I still like him, but I feel differently. Anyway, so I saw Prince of Darkness and was not as taken with it as some of the others, but it was just fun to watch the progression of that guy's career, and fun to see that era in films from, the early 80s. I guess it's really the 80s, the ones I was watching. But anyway, so I'm kind of in that mode still, now kind of in the mid 70s with Stephen King. And yeah, I've been enjoying it.
That's so funny because They Live is probably my favorite John Carpenter. I love everything about that. I love the like the hidden agenda that's in that, and all that stuff is good. That kind of story is like right up my alley. And I have tried multiple times as an adult. I remember watching Big Trouble in Little China when I was a kid, and I know that was like a big movie for you. And there was a couple other cabin kids that really liked that a lot. And I tried it as an adult a couple times to like sit down and watch it, and it's still good and it's hilarious. And I mean, Kurt Russell is just absolutely fantastic in that. But I just recently saw this Reddit debate that really made me pinpoint why I was having so much trouble, because like he's not the hero. Like Kurt Russell's not the hero in the movie at all. Like,
yeah, he's an idiot.
Even though, he's just a big idiot who just screws everything up, and he thinks he's the hero, and like, and he's not at all the hero. And I'm like, what? I just could not wrap my head around that kind of storytelling where I was like, no, that's Because at the beginning, even who's the old Asian guy that's at the beginning where he's like, you don't speak ill of Jack Burton. That man is a hero.
And leave him alone. Yeah, it's Egg Shen. Yeah. I don't know the actor's name, but and he does that magic between his hands.
Yeah. And I'm like, why would if the whole movie everybody knows that Jack Burton's not the hero, why would it start out with him saying like, you leave him alone and you
you know, it's funny. Don't let me derail you too much from the Reddit. Maybe this was in the Reddit, but when I was listening to the commentaries and stuff for it recently, that scene at the beginning was added because like after the fact, but I think the studio had the same problem that exactly the same problem as yours. So they felt like, well, we need to build this guy up as the hero and not try to, and because of that, it might not connect for.
It did, and that's literally what ruins the movie. It was ruining the movie. Now I need to just skip that scene and just go right into where he's like, because like right after that it cuts to like him on the CB. He's like, Jack Burton. I'll tell you what Jack Burton would do. Yeah, and it's like just being awesome, Kurt Russell.
And there was that whole thing too. I didn't know, and now that having learned it, I see it now in the performances, but in certain of those movies he was always doing, Kurt Russell's kind of imitating somebody else,
right
so I think the first movie they did together was Elvis, which I'd also never seen, which was pretty cool, and then after that Escape from New York, which they wanted their studio, whomever wanted Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef to be in it, so Lee Van Cleef is in it, Clint Eastwood is not. And because those guys were paired together in a lot of the Sergio Leone movies from the 60s, which I also really liked as a kid. In fact, weird aside, I've been going through a lot of these old VHSs of mine and preserving them. I was really into those movies for a period in particular, and I didn't really have an outlet, so I couldn't just make my own spaghetti western. So I did some kind of improvisation. I'll send you the link because it exists now. I went out and there's a wiffle ball game going on with my brother and his buddies Adam and Brody, and then I come in with this like makeshift poncho because trying to be like Clint Eastwood in those movies, and there's like these tight shots of like my sister up in a tree like cutting away, this tight close-up of her of like, oh no, the man with no name is here. And then there's this, it goes on like that, and I kind of step up to the plate, and I'm like Babe Ruth pointing and hitting wiffle balls. And, but that's so awesome. But at some point, like I just do that a little bit, and there's close-ups, and then I just go and shoot everybody with this rifle. It's the most disturbing thing to see as an adult.
That's spectacular. Are you kidding me? That's so awesome.
It was really disturbing. Like, it's funny, but disturbing.
That's great.
Oh, and then I was also so into those movies that Jackson and I did one called Dying Breed, which stole the first opening screen from For a Few Dollars More, which is the first one they were in together, Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef. Sorry, I also really specialize in the long walk for a short drink. I tried to use that phrase because you had used it when I saw you recently, and I kept screwing it up, so I'm glad you remind me. But
yeah.
So yeah, Jackson and I did a version of like that story of that Western kind of married with certain like Van Damme type elements. But I used that opening screen where it's like where life had no value, something. This is where the bounty killers came about, and we stole some kind of blocking from some of those scenes. But anyway, so John Carpenter was put onto this movie where they wanted Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef, only got Lee Van Cleef. So when Kurt Russell stepped in, I don't know whose idea it was, but essentially he does a Clint Eastwood accent as Snake Plissken.
That makes so much sense, though.
Yeah, if you see, once I learned that and I saw it again, I was like, oh yeah, he's like, call me Snake and everything.
I like Escape from New York a lot, and actually, for all its kitschiness, Escape from L.A. is pretty good too.
I didn't quite get that far in the chronology, but I remember when that came out. I should try that one. I'm up to something about Memoirs of an Invisible Man for John Carpenter, and that's where I was like, shit, I just couldn't quite bring myself to watch that one.
John Carpenter directed that? Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase?
Yeah, is that any good? Should I watch that?
Yeah, you should watch that. That's spectacular.
Oh, good.
Oh, man, that's like, this is like the movie track for our childhood. That's what this is going to end up being. I can feel it. Like,
I like it, though.
I don't know what you would call that. Not instead of a soundtrack, I guess. But
Oh, right, yeah. I had thought of a name somewhere in the middle of it. Oh, the Long Walk for a Short Drink could definitely be a segment. Or a drinking game.
Or a drinking game, yeah. We could totally do that. You're not allowed to drink. You have to finish a beer once we finish the story.
Right, by the time I get back around. So to try to bring it full circle, then the next movie they did together, I think, was Big Trouble in Little China. And he's doing John Wayne in that movie.
Okay.
Which once you know that, you can kind of see it.
Absolutely.
And the thing is somebody too, but I don't remember who. That was the last one, I think, with that. And actually might have been the last time they worked together, possibly. But
so what's your take on the end of The Thing? Is he infected or not infected?
God, I just saw it once, and I'm trying to think. I guess I'm embarrassed to admit this, but things like that don't really occur to me. I never try to figure out a movie. They don't occur to me
either. That's what's going to be awesome about this. This is going to be spectacular.
This is why I will need guests, I think.
Yeah.
or things to refer to, or quote. I never. I don't know. Things just washed over me, and I was like, well, I enjoyed that.
And it's over. There's the credits. And I'm done with this now. No, like so many times I will run across a debate online, like something happening online, or I read a lot of Cracked articles on cracked.com, and they'll talk about stuff. And like the ending to The Thing, you would be amazed how many times that comes up. Like that's a big debate. And
I've heard it a lot.
I don't know.
Do you have an opinion?
I think everybody was effed at the end of that. Like, I think everybody had it. Everybody had it. It got passed around. Everybody had it, and they were going. I mean, I'm sure there's people, if this makes it onto an episode, like that will want to debate that. But I'd have to watch it again. Like you, I've only seen it, like really seen it in my adult brain once. So that would be a good one. Maybe we could, like, one segment could be like assignments. Like, okay, we need to watch at some point. We need to watch this and come back to this.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
and I like that too from like things that you mention, or there's those kinds of things we could revisit. Whether that's an old Palmer's Picks thing, I'd love to find a way to integrate that now and again. Even if it's like only every so many episodes or something. But
right. So
let's keep with the chronology. I think that might be, in terms of like a comic book, it's every comic book somebody's first comic book, as they say. But there's always the first episode that is the origin story, as it were. So I think maybe we'll get out of before we got too many names and forgot too many people. Transition maybe to the next thing, which would have been Mind of Philip.
Mind of Philip, yeah. So after Palmer's Picks like fell apart because we ran out of friends, which, I mean, respectively though, like we had a great run, like 30-ish episodes. That's pretty good considering the bulk of the people we brought on were our friends. And so we got our 30 episodes and we just could not solicit outside people, which was frustrating. Like, I mean, you're an independent artist, so I'm sure you run into this too. I mean, hindsight, like after the fact, after, Palmer's Picks was dead, I worked for another video store, and like 2 or 3 people while I was working there, and that one happened to be in Wadsworth.
Oh, yeah.
Would
the other
come
one
in
was
and
in Worcester, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, they would come into the Wadsworth store and they would be like, oh, you're the guy that used to do the show on WCTV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that show. How come you never? And like my response was always like bitter and angry. Like, how come you never emailed me? You could have come on and had your own episode. Yeah. It wasn't like thank you. It wasn't like, oh, I'm glad you liked it. I never said those things. It was always like, you should have emailed me. Just like,
I totally understand that response, but
bitter and angry. Like, I really like that show too. You know why it died? Because you never emailed me.
Oh man. I was just thinking too. I mean, we would have been. I would have been 20. So how old? You would have been 18. that
yeah,
right?
yeah, that sounds right.
Wow, because now, you know, a lot of those, even though I don't see those people from that time, it's very rare. But
Yeah.
I still think of them as fondly and as my friends, and I don't have that many. If we were to do that show now, I would have a tough time bringing on too many different people, but there'd be enough, you know. And then now, you know, my younger brother, eventually, like, you know, he would come on now and his buddies and all that stuff. We could start it up again.
I'm sure we could like do a Palmer's Picks revival. Maybe let's get the podcast off the ground and maybe we'll talk about like doing a Palmer's Picks revival.
I just want to go back to 99.
I know. Listen, 99 was like a great year for film.
Oh, that's right.
Not just, well, I mean, in part because of Palmer's Picks, but
I remember you saying that. I remember you saying that for a long time. For me, I think the year that I returned to the most often in my head in terms of like, there's so many great things that I loved to come out in one year was 94. We should talk about that in depth at some point. Those years.
Yeah. We'll have to do a side-by-side comparison because you can bring up all the domestic film releases for the year on Wikipedia. And I've gotten into this debate with people and I'll bring up the 1999 year and they scroll through and they're like, yeah, that was a great year. I don't just mean like for stuff that I loved. It was like a critical and box office, like everything was good that year. I feel like that was the year that Hollywood's been trying to redo in this like modern era that's just like fed into the reboots. They could never achieve that 99. And so they just like defaulted back. Now we're slowly progressing into the 90s franchises now. You know, by 2020, we'll start reviving the 2000 franchises, which those are just the 80s franchises. So like we need to get out of like Hollywood needs to get out of that shit.
Yeah, it's funny if you think about it, or the rebooting or remaking is not that new a thing. It's just that now everything is so like available, and you know it used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, like I think Hitchcock remade his own movies to some extent.
But that's fair.
They'd wait a few years and make them, but at that time there was no secondary market, so it was all theatrical stuff. But yeah, you know, I heard this thing about 20. I think it's 20 years. 20 years is the sort of tipping point for nostalgia, and it really hit me in terms of my own age when somebody pointed out that the show The Wonder Years. Do you remember that show? Did you watch that?
Yeah.
So they said, when I heard this too, because now it's been a little while even since then, they said basically if you were to make The Wonder Years now, in terms of to have the same distance in time, back in time for the perspective, you would have to make it about the 90s. And I was just like, whoa.
That's so true.
Yeah, so and it's so because that was even
like late 80s, right? Like wasn't that like the mid to late 80s?
I think it was. Oh, when that show was out, I think that was the late 80s, and I think it was about the mid 60s, maybe starting. It must have been
in early 70s.
Yeah, but so that whole thing about the nostalgia in the 20 years. Now I'm a profoundly nostalgic person, anyways. So I mean I'm nostalgic for when we first started talking. So. But that idea of that, like, honest to goodness, where it like kicks in for everyone else, that 20-year thing, I was like, oh, that makes sense from certain things that we're seeing. But anyway, speaking of nostalgia, let's keep on trucking through our own personal.
We keep getting on sidebars.
History. I think that will be the main reoccurring theme of the show. Yeah, sidebar. Just call it sidebar. I'm writing that.
There's a good name. Sidebar.
Sidebar.
I don't know. I like Long Walk for a Short Drink.
Oh yeah,
as a name, like that's pretty good. All right. So WPLMR. So Palmer's Picks like fell apart, right?
It's so sad when you put it that way. Maybe just. I don't know how else to say it, I guess, but I never think of it like that. I always forget the bitter part of it.
It just like it ran its course. I guess that's a more like that's probably a nicer way of saying it. So WPLMR I keep doing that. Palmer's Picks ran its course. We're not there yet in the timeline.
In the timeline. Stay tuned, folks.
So we really found out that we liked working with each other, and we wanted to keep that going. So then, 30 episodes was very respectable for what our limited resources and our limitations on guests and stuff like that. We still were able to crank out 30 episodes. And you were, through your work with The Crow and all that stuff, you were in a couple, you were in the Cleveland Filmmakers and organization and stuff like that. And that's what led you to American Movie and Mark Beauchart.
Oh, yeah. Oh, did that happen before the idea for the show?
Yeah. So you had went up and they screened American Movie and had Mark Beauchart there, and he was selling copies of Coven because he still hadn't hit his mark yet on Coven.
Yes. I love that dude. I listen to it. There's a radio show he does out of Milwaukee called Cinema Fireside. And they podcast on SoundCloud. So I listen to him every week. I love that dude.
I'm gonna have to listen to that because it sounds odd. Just his voice and his cadence is
He's
worth
same
listening
guy.
to.
Same guy.
So, and you had got this. I don't think actually it was a result of that, because we already had the idea, because when you bought your copy of Coven, you're like, so my buddy and I we have this idea for this independent. Do you care if we use Coven for it?
Yeah, midnight matinee shows. I remember.
Yeah.
You taught me that term, I think.
And you were, you did this great impression of him where he was like, sure, man, go ahead.
Yeah,
sure, man, go ahead.
And eventually, he even went on to sign the release form we came up for our little production company.
Yeah, absolutely. So the plan was it was a much grander scale of show.
You thought of this title first too, didn't you?
I did, The Mind of Philip, and and it was that midnight matinee style show. That's another thing. That's another legacy of Northeast Ohio, which I guess all of the nation had that. But we had Big Chuck and Little John, and we had Ghoulardi, and we had Son of Ghoulardi, and
Frank and Drac. Are you aware of Frank and Drac? Do you remember?
No,
them? They were. I only mention it because I love them so much. And I rewatched that 1988 run that they did last year. So Frank and Drac is another midnight matinee show. Was when Fox was still a pretty new network in the late 80s, and they WOIO 19 Fox, I guess. It couldn't have been just Cleveland. Anyway, no, maybe. Sorry. I think Frank and Drac was just Cleveland, but what they did is they had, I think, a leftover from probably maybe the 50s or something, where the Universal monster movies were always on television because they were sold at this big discounted rate to television stations to air them repeatedly at a very low cost. So they started to air they started with Dracula, I think, and then they moved on to Frankenstein. They had Frankenstein February 1988. I was already obsessed with Frankenstein, but then now, because of this television series, every Saturday night 11:30, or maybe it's a little earlier, they play them, but in order of how the series went.
Oh wow.
And then they did the Wolfman after that, and the Wolfman series, and you could watch them all in order. So I forgot. And actually, I went on to do my own kind of. Anyway, never mind. Video Vault. I had a show at WCTV as well, at the same time as Palmer's Picks, actually, before, where I would show stuff from the WCTV archive with some young hosts. But I had an opening sequence that was an homage to Frank and Drac. But anyway, I love Frank and Drac so much. There's almost nothing about it on the internet. Little things here or there. At some point, I think the guy that played Drac posted some clips in the last couple of years, but I literally have a Google alert for anything that comes up.
That's awesome.
Because I loved that show so much when I was I would have been 7 or Anyway, but sorry.
So Mind of Philip was going to be an homage to that.
Yes, to Frank and Drac.
To those midnight matinees where the main character Philip, which was, I mean, this was kind of autobiographical too for me, because I'm really I totally, if a movie, I don't rate a movie on whether it's good or bad or any of those things. It needs to grab me and suck me in. And like, if I can escape, I totally use movies as an escape to escape my like shitty life and to go into this other world for an hour and a half to 2 hours and just be there. So if a movie can do that, it's good in my opinion. And so Philip, the main character, had like this exaggerated like shittier life than mine. Like, it was essentially my life, but it was like exaggeratingly shittier. So like,
oh, and you weren't, because in Mind of Philip, you worked at a factory. So did you work at the factory?
I worked at an iron
store?
factory. What time? I think I was out of the video store by this point. Yeah, because it was in between. I worked at the factory during the summer in between my like freshman year of college and my sophomore year of college.
Okay.
So I was working at the factory at the time. That's when we started Mind of Philip.
Because that was like the opening sequence. We shot some, because we shot it on 16 millimeter film, the opening, and I was not very experienced and didn't have any lights. So the one scene we shot of you coming out of the factory on 16 just was too dark. I couldn't see it or use it in the opening.
Oh, yeah. Well, we shot the Palmer's
running...
Picks opening on 16 millimeter film. I don't think we did Mind of Philip on 16 millimeter.
No, yeah, because remember, it's like a silent movie. It's like Philip wakes up and then...
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. You're right.
And then eventually we did reshoot something on video where we showed you coming out of there. But I'm just realizing now that so our final episode for Problem 6, I think, was in November of 1999. And it was by... Is it possible? I feel like it was January that we were shooting and releasing Mind of Philip #1. So, yeah, so you would have then ended your time... Did you ever do the factory while you were making Palmer's Picks, or did those two things kind of transition at the same time?
So I was still, my freshman year of college, I was still living at home in Rittman. And that's what made it it made it conducive to still doing Palmer's Picks, because I was home. I would just commute up to Akron. Oh, okay. And then the summer, I think we did shoot maybe over spring break or something, because Jackson was home from the Art Institute, and
it got much more sporadic.
Everybody was,
I remember.
Yeah, everybody was kind of home. It would have been one of those holidays in the spring. We were probably getting started in January, but I think we didn't shoot the first episode because we had everybody in that first episode of The Mind of Philip.
And a big. We get to the conceit of the show, I guess, would reveal how we ended up doing that.
You
got to tell people real quick about the iron. Or you got to tell a little bit more about that factory, because I've worked in some factory situations, but this was serious like business.
Oh yeah,
as I recall.
I got paid to get dirty and work out. That was how I was okay with it. It was old iron factory, like the the furnaces were on one half, and I worked in the finishing room, which, if anybody ever hears this and they work in a metal shop or a metal factory, the finishing room is like the worst room, because everything would come out, and they used sand form pours. So they would have the sand forms, and then they would pour the molten iron into those, and then they would go into big giant like rock tumblers, basically, that instead of like sand being in there was like steel shot. Like if you were to open a buckshot, or like a shell up for a shotgun, that's what was inside these things. And it would like fire that around and clean all the sand off the parts. But then if you've ever done like a model car kit before, you have like, those are just injection molding plastic, and they do that all in one big form. And you have like the little arms and risers, and you have like the little nipples from where it breaks off of the thing, and you would shave those off with your X-Acto knife if you're doing a plastic model. But when you're working iron, you have to use like compressed air tools to like grind that stuff off. And like Oh man, I busted so many knuckles, like 40-inch wheel grinders, which are just these giant stone wheels that you like hold these little tiny minuscule parts up against to like grind off the iron. And like I lost so many knuckles that summer, and just like it was atrocious. It's still to this day is probably arguably like my favorite job I've ever had. And it was
God,
just
really?
like it was just because it was like I was really good at the work. Like I was really good at it, but I never had to take it home. Like as soon as I would like punch the clock, I was done until my next shift, you know, like I never had to worry about it. I never had to be like, oh my gosh, I got to get these pieces out. And I wouldn't lose any sleep over that or anything. And then when I got in there, I was getting paid to work out and get dirty because like everything was heavy because it's iron, and like the dirt was like, it was just like so much dirt and gross and just like I ruined so many clothes, and like the iron was so raw, it would rust when it like, so like the flakes of iron would come off that you're grinding, and you'd be sweating because it's 110 degrees in there. And when that iron would like hit your skin, it would instantly rust because it's just raw iron. And so I just remember like being orange. That was like my color that summer was orange because everything was rusted from all the iron, like debris and everything. I'm probably still hacking up like rusty iron out of my lungs, but it's still to this day. I would like, if I could, it paid shit. That was the thing that sucked. So like, but like if I could find that job now, making the money I make now, like
right.
I would much rather do that job like than any of the jobs that I've had since then, just because it was so, the people were so genuine and honest, and like everybody was making crap money. So there was no like quote unquote office politics of people trying to stab each other in the back to like try to get this promotion or that promotion or get the grace of like the supervisor or anything like that. Like everybody was kind of making the same crap money. So you didn't have any of that office politicky crap. You never took any of that work home. Like, again, I never worried about anything once I was done there until my next shift. And yeah, I remember I was in the best shape of my life during that summer because I was just like lifting these big giant, like 50-pound Y bodies and all this stuff to grind them out. Oh man, that was a great job.
It's so funny because I would say the same about WCTV for me. Not about the dirty part or the hard. But just in terms of the job I probably enjoyed most. There was sort of, because I just got, so I would be there, and the whole mandate of that place, there was no money. You couldn't be asking for money for things. Neither the people on camera or the people at the studio. And people would just come in, they'd want to make their thing, and I would help them make it. And I still, to some extent, do that, I guess, in the job I have now. I make videos for university, but that's more like I have to make. I'm never wanting for anything to do in that job. Whereas with and it can be very stressful, but I'm still kind of helping people make their thing, partnering with them and stuff. But at the WCTV cable access job, if nobody scheduled time, I could just work on my own project. So I had both the joy of like helping people make their thing, using these, sort of skills that I had that could actually help people. And, or I could just work on my own thing. Whereas now there's really no work on your own thing if there's nothing going on, because there's always something going on. But I guess that 1999, man,
goes back.
Was a golden year for us.
So
at least in certain respects.
So Mind of Philip was just this like.
Oh, did you come up with that did you daydream that while you were working, or did
I have
that
no
job
idea
have
where that name originated from. Like what? Because I wanted to. I knew I wanted to play a character because we were like Palmer's Picks died, and so
you were studying acting in college at first, weren't you? Was that at the same time?
No. I switched to that after that. Yeah, after
Okay.
Mind of Philip. Like when I had gotten the taste for this stuff, I was like, well, maybe this is the route that I was supposed to go, which it wasn't. And I'm glad that I stuck with education. But
you're a good actor, though. I remember that, and I've seen some of that work recently.
I still love. I'd love to get back into that headspace. You know what I mean? Like to be back. I'd love to get back to having that level of confidence where I could just like step out of myself long enough and be somebody else. Like that would be awesome. But I knew I wanted to play a character. We realized that we worked really well together on Palmer's picks, and I feel like we both like, yeah, we can go up a notch. Like we can take this up a notch, you know, and see what we can come up with. And so the idea was, if we used non-commercial films, if we could find independent filmmakers that wanted to showcase their film in its entirety, and we could kind of borrow from this midnight matinee legacy of like old school television, like when there was local networks that needed to fill airtime in the middle of the night, and that's where that midnight matinee idea came from. It would allow me to play a character. And it just kind of grew into that, like this idea of Mind of Philip. And I remember like making the website for it, and like had business cards and stickers, and we had put together a little release for people to like, for artists to release, like, yes, you can use our image. Did we have all our friends sign a release to be actors, like to play characters?
I think what we did at the time actually was just a release for the movie. We weren't doing talent releases. But yeah, so I think we should probably mention too the idea that the title Mind of Philip then became that thing where we use the idea of how you would immerse yourself in the movies to, like, we would then create wraparound stuff like at the beginning and end, and then at least once in the middle, because these movies didn't have commercial breaks necessarily, and they were being shown on non-commercial television, but we'd break into the movie and kind of have something that it's as though Philip kind of became, the lines between his real life and the movies were blurred in these themed sketches, which is how. So
yeah, the planned gag was like, and the two, I guess we should probably get to that point too, is we only ever made 2 episodes of The Mind of Philip.
Yeah, because it was hard. It was kind of hard to do.
It was really hard to do. It was like really in depth, and then on top of that, it was like to try to find independent filmmakers that had movies that we could also incorporate Philip around those independent films, you know. So Coven was the first one, and then we did another one, an independent zombie movie. But the gist was like, you'd start out seeing Philip in some shitty circumstance and whatever it was he was trying to escape, and then it would break into the movie, and halfway through you would see that like crossing over where Philip is now he's immersed in the movie. And then the gag at the end when you would come back would be, he would realize, oh, I'm just in the movie. But then was he really in the movie? Like something would like take it just a little, you know, and that was the gag. And that
first one with Coven, because we knew that we had that movie and the idea. And so our buddy Larry wrote a script, I believe, that took that idea and made it into a scenario. And the first one, we helped kind of solidify the idea of the show by making that first thing be. So Coven is about a guy that gets wrapped up in a self-help group that turns out to be more like a cult. And so Philip's in a self-help group for people like Movieholics Anonymous or something, people with the same, the same problem as him, but like, I can't remember. Like Katie played a girl that was in love with Michael J. Fox, obsessed with Michael J. Fox, and, and Logan couldn't only speak in quotes from Jerry Maguire, stuff like that.
So good.
We had a bunch of people though, and we crowded them in the WCTV studio and dressed it up, kind of like a kind of a space for a meeting, a self-help group of that type. Had cookies and stuff like you might have, and. I remember we shot it in one really long day, and at the end of it, not from like hollering at people, but I was just like, my voice was gone, I was hoarse, and it was a really fun thing. And then the next one, it's kind of funny because the only 2 we did are actually sort of feature notable characters outside of even our small circle of friends, because the first one, Coven, has the American Movie tie, which was a very successful and fantastic documentary from 1999.
Yep.
But then the second one was a guy I knew from, and we had mutual friends. Well, we didn't know Sarah then, so maybe I just knew Dustin, but a guy called Dusty Austin from Worcester, which is this neighboring town, the one where Palmer was working at the video store. And this guy, his family owned a video store, and he made movies, and that's how I'd met him. But his movie was about a zombie hunter. It was called Bakru, and it's still kind of floating around, especially because the guy that played the zombie hunter is a dude named Josh Krachik, who went on to have a very notable audition for... was it American Idol or America's Got Talent? Something.
America's Got Talent, I think.
Yeah, and he kind of went on. He doesn't necessarily look like what you'd think a pop singer would look like, but he does look like a badass zombie hunter.
He actually did pull off the badass zombie hunter like very, very well.
And he kind of looked like that always, I guess. He always kind of had this sort of anyway. But so he became kind of famous through that. So that movie has a little bit of a cult following. Dusty did like vintage VHS re-releases of it around the time of the Krachik thing.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And then just to bring it sort of, I don't know, full circle or what, but eventually I went on to write and play music publicly, and didn't have near the success that Krachik did, but I did share a show with him after I moved to here to Minneapolis. So it was like two guys from Wayne County playing First Avenue, which is like Prince's Club in Purple Rain.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now, mind you, we were not in the Purple Rain room. We were in the side room. But anyway,
I don't think you need to tell people that part. You just don't tell them. Like nobody else will know that. I didn't even know that there was a side room. I just assumed that it was a club.
Yeah,
you just ended that it was Prince's Purple Rain Club.
Cut that,
oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like
I was up there playing Jungle Love.
Oh.
Anyway, so those were the only two we got to do because that one was too hard. But I remember we were doing. Through that, we were starting to get... The third one was going to be... Kind of come through this filmmaker... We'll call him Crow, because that was his nickname. And I met him through the studio, through my interest... through my movie kind of based on the Crow comic. He was a guy that liked that sort of thing, and so we became friendly through the studio. And then he was going to do... he wanted to do a documentary on the Crow, but kind of use my adaptation and story of making it as a kind of means to explore the history of that book and kind of the cultural phenomenon of it. And so he did long interviews with myself and my buddy Jackson, who made that movie, that eventually he lost interest in, and I finished as kind of my own autobiographical documentary, I guess, something I've specialized in since. But he was around for that recording of the first Mind of Philip for some reason.
He was like one of the cameramen, right?
He did a behind the scenes camera for just a little while. And
oh, that's right. Yeah.
I think it was just because he was around because we were working on this Crow documentary, and he was very impressed with your performance. And he was kind of working with us. He was writing a script then. I don't know if we want to name or not. I don't mind, but we might not want to.
I've worked in. Listen, I made this fucking Crow. Wanted to make this movie. He asked me to do it. I was like 19 or maybe going on 20 at that point in time, because that would have been 2000. We would have made Mind of Philip in like this through the summer of 2000. And so I would have been 20 at the end of that summer. And he wanted to... It was essentially... I don't want to say the title, because you can still find it. And like... but I think it's fair to say it was an... I'll be this generous. It was an homage to Eraserhead.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, how's that?
That's very diplomatic and true. And it is actually... Somehow he finished it, and it is kind of cool in ways.
And I starred in that, and that was fun. and that was kind of like my first venture out of projects that weren't with Dave, still though recording something.
Yeah, and he was helping us find our third movie. I don't remember if we had a signed release for that one. It was by this filmmaker.
We did have a signed release, but I'm pretty sure it was just his email, like an email he had made.
Fred Olin Ray, I think, was that filmmaker. And the movie was called, I can't think what it was called. It had the craziest video box.
It was like, it wasn't Lifeform, because that's an actual like cult horror movie.
I'm gonna look up Fred Olin Ray, because he is a real filmmaker.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
He was kind of an Ed Woody type character. Because there was a script for that, for that Mind of Philip, that was based on that movie somehow. We just didn't. I think what ended up happening was the movie with the Eraserhead kind of movie took over the priority, and we never got back to it. Shoot, did you find it, Fred Olin? There it is. Yeah.
Filmography.
Oh my God,
Director.
Dude looks like Michael Madsen, at least in his.
He does.
Oh my God, look at these names.
Yeah.
Cheating Airways, 13 Erotic Ghosts. Oh man, I'm sad this.
So this this would have been back. There we go.
Oh,
Submerge,
I feel like I'll know it when I see it, but I could be wrong.
Look, Emmanuel 2000.
That's it. It's called Biohazard from 1985.
Biohazard, yeah. I remember watching that and thinking, like, this is exactly the kind of stuff that this show is supposed to be showing.
Yeah.
And like, we did have a script for that, which I guess another, to be fair, like we had our friend Larry, and you mentioned him once already. Like he was writing the scripts, and we had
our little production unit, Whammo.
Yeah.
He was
Whammo
the staff
Productions.
writer.
Yeah. Staff right. Oh yeah. That was good stuff.
Oh, hold on. I got to read the tagline for Biohazard, or the only description. Alien monsters use a psychic to try and take over the Earth. Awesome. Science gone very bad. Anyway, so yeah, we had our little Whammo production group, and we had business cards, and we worked as a little team to create these shows, and then it kind of, I guess the energy shifted over into the movie you were starring in. And and then that kind of fizzled out, and I think probably college really took hold.
Yep.
Because we didn't make other video things for. I think the next thing that you made that I remember is the WPLMR.
Yeah.
CDs. Is that true? Am I missing anything in between?
Yeah. No, I think that's about right. So that would be a jump. I guess in between there, you made. You and the rest of the Cabin guys made the Steve album.
Oh,
right?
yeah. So we had a band back in the Cabin days. The thing was that people would really play songs one at a time, sing and play guitar, and occasionally collaborate. And thank God one of the guys kind of played drums, but it's not like we'd have drums at the Cabin, so there were bongos. But eventually, yeah, when we didn't have that Cabin thing to return to, or some place to always go where we could find each other, and people were away at colleges and coming back on breaks, we decided to have a band and write songs. And it was kind of silly. We were all 21 and not especially good musicians, though I do really like some of those songs. But there was I guess our acknowledgement of the joke of it, I guess, was by calling the band Steve. And we had that's actually where the Whammo Productions came from, because we had a song that was not really a song, but this kind of rhythmic thing that built to these kind of maniacal crescendos. And once it reached that point, then there was silence and a triangle hit. I wasn't there for that, though. Were you? Is that why the word was said, Whammo?
No, Whammo started from the Blair Witch Party.
Oh, which is yes. 1999 movie.
Which is another 99 movie.
We threw a party.
I'm going to bring up the damn 1999 list, and we're just going to go through it here in a second. I know that's going to happen.
Worthwhile. Yeah, that should happen.
So, at the end, so we were enraptured with Blair Witch, because it was like one of the first, for our generation. There were found footage movies that existed before that. And, but I remember Blair Witch just had this amazing media campaign that kind of led up to it. And even when the movie came out, it was, they did a great job of not letting any of the actors do any press. And so in the Sci-Fi Channel put out this documentary on the Blair Witch before the movie was released. And so even going into the theater, you were still like, is this real? Is this not real? Like, what the hell happened to these people? And we all kind of got enraptured with that movie. So that when that came out on video, which I guess would have been October of 99.
Yeah, they fast-tracked it because I feel like it came out in theaters in August.
Yeah. We did a Blair Witch party, and at the end of it, the production or the company that had done the DVD conversion, their company was called Whammo.
Yeah.
And like
I think only one M possibly.
Yeah, WAMO.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it was supposed to be pronounced Whammo. I think it was just supposed to be WAMO.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the movie was over and we were all sitting around talking about the Blair Witch and everything, and it rolled through the credits, and then it shows those like the small companies that have to do with something, and that came up and it said Whammo, and I remember saying like, Whammo, that's a great word. We should say that more. And then it just became an adjective for like, it was just like this punchline that you would just like, you would just be like, something would happen and you'd be like, Whammo, like that. Right, and like, and it just became like our group word. Like we just said Whammo a lot. And,
that's right.
And then it ended up becoming a Steve song, like when that instrumental like craziness, and then you'd stop and the one ding and everybody'd say Whammo.
Yeah, the most ridiculous Steve song. And even the band Steve name is, depending on who you ask, how it kind of came to be the name was a similar thing. For some reason, it was just a name bandied about for fun or to be funny. I think there's some stuff from like Multiplicity where the one Michael Keaton clone is so stupid. He calls him Steve.
He calls everybody Steve. Yeah. I like Pizza Steve.
Yeah.
I like Pizza Steve. Yeah. I like it.
But even all of those things are wrapped up in making things like the party that Palmer mentioned. I've filmed and had my brother help film kind of behind the scenes as we planned the party, which also involved some kind of costume performances of the Dave Matthews song Halloween. Some U2 thing where anyway we kind of made productions out of it. Seemed like almost everything that we did, and when the Steve band thing came about, the only way I could participate was to practice at the studio where I worked that we've talked about, and in order to use that space you have to provide them with programming. So we had the other person that worked there and I would help facilitate at times and filming what became a documentary years later. So I sort of, as I mentioned, have a bit of a specialty of making documentaries about myself and my friends and our creative endeavors. And I'm working on one of those right now about my
We're recording
music.
One right now. What are you talking about? Like,
yeah, right, yeah. Well, I think the hope with this one is that we'll get to a place where this is the installment where we talk about who we are and where we came from, and then hopefully from there on we'll just be like, hi, I'm Palmer and I'm Dave, and talk about other things. But yeah, so Steve happened during that time, and I
met my first wife.
And, you made the Something Real movie.
Larry and I made Something Real, and there were a couple other films that Larry was really trying to get off the ground,
and I was involved in
that
one
he wanted
of those.
me to be a part of.
And you wrote one called Love with like LUV. That didn't get past the script stage, but I think was planned to a short to be made. So there was some stuff in there. I remember being so excited. I was so thrilled because I lived in North Carolina at the time in like 2002 or so. And eventually moved back to Ohio. But when I did come back, or even I might have known that you guys were doing this when I was down there, I was like, oh, what? My buddies are making movies? I can't be there to see it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
And we made Something Real. And Something Real was great.
Yeah, it is.
I still have a copy of that like floating around.
I do too. I have a commentary VHS. I don't think I've ever watched it, but I think about it a lot. And I'm going to get to it. I'm kind of working my way through.
I might have a commentary DVD somewhere, actually, because I think I took that VHS, like when I re-edited it for DVD. I mean, I have it shot for shot on the DVD.
Oh, you re-edited it digitally for DVD?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Oh, I must have that, sir. That's
yeah. I'll have to look around and see if I can find that.
Oh yeah, that needs to be preserved.
But yeah, so we did Something Real. That was all great, and then my marriage fell apart, and that's what led to the WPLMR mix CDs.
Right. Yeah.
So I was living in my brother's basement at the time, and just like kind of miserable, and I actually listened. Ash and I listened to both of those. We listened to your album too, which is amazing. I just haven't had a chance to talk to you about that yet. So good. It is totally a Pearl Jam album, which is awesome.
Awesome. I'll take that. So we're going to make one of those.
Yeah, it is totally. But you know, like listening now back to like that first WPLMR mix CD and the second one, and the third one is floating around somewhere. I don't know if I have a copy of that somewhere, or I know it exists, but man, I was just so like philosophical in that first one, and just like so positive. I wish I was still positive like that.
We'll get you back there.
I was going through, I was going through like one of the hardest times of my life, and I was so positive on that CD. But that started like, again, where you just have that, I just didn't want to make just a mix CD. Like it had to be one step more. So that's what turned it into like this radio style production, which then led to actual WPLMR podcast, where I did that with independent music.
Yeah, so that it could be shared as a podcast, not just CDs passed around. But
right, and then
that's kind of like not altogether dissimilar from like Mind to Philip or something, except for you could go out and find on the internet now. You go out through Creative Commons and find music.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it worked. Like I would spend hours just sifting through, looking for one good track on an independent album. I mean, because that's like that's like the counter side to having all of that at your fingertips. Is like there's
a lot to wade
anybody
through.
can put something. Yeah, there's a lot to wade through, and so you would and I had some unspoken rules where it was like I because I love albums. I love listening to an entire album, not just like one or two tracks. So I would want to find something that would be off of an album that would be worth listening to, and that made it a lot more difficult.
Oh yeah, so it would be, you could recommend not just that song, but like go check out this. Work.
Yeah, check out the whole album.
Cool. I forgot about that. I remember now.
And you were on an episode of that, like when when you put out your first album, like we had you on.
Yeah, to catch folks up, or just equal disclosure, I lived in North Carolina when I was married, and I also had a marriage fall apart just before yours, or a little bit before yours, and that's what brought me back to Ohio and got me into writing my own music. Again, like I was in a very bad place, but out of it came something very positive. And for the last like 10, 12 years or so, I've been making music under my own name, which is David Ullman. And and a lot of the Steve guys would be still involved, and my brother would produce and stuff. And so that was kind of how I was continuing on making things. And then, WPLMR was mostly your thing to have some of us on as guests. A handful of our friends were. And then how long? There was a bit of a break between. So that went through kind of three phases. Like the first one was the mix CDs. Then it was like the Creative Commons music. And my favorite parts were always your bits. And so eventually you got to a point where there wasn't music, right? Or there was less because you were.
Well, the second version of WPLMR, there was no music involved. It was just me with a group of people, just like talking and riffing on each other.
And my brother was among them.
Having a good time. Yep, your brother, one of our mutual friends, Metcalf, my niece. We were the core contingent, the four of us.
Yeah.
And we all had nicknames because, plausible deniability was a big part of that. And so...
Yeah, because that was a really wild affair, which was a big part of why it was fun.
Oh, it was crazy. It really was, and I don't know what I was thinking. It could have been so much more if we would have just dialed some of the stuff back, I think, because then we wouldn't have needed to feel like we needed to beep stuff out or whatever. Okay, but I do need to come back because this will be a little WPLMR-esque story. I recently, because now we've talked about your first marriage and living in South Carolina and my first marriage, North Carolina. Sorry, geez, not South Carolina.
I don't know why I felt the need to correct that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. They're two separate states. You don't want to lump them together, right? And but I've just recently, for some reason, I think it might have been on the road trip when we got together the last couple of weeks when my second and current and last wife, I'm one way or another, I'm never getting married again. I was telling her about when I came down with my first wife to visit you and your first wife on a road trip, and I talked about how your ex-wife's apartment, like your guys' apartment, the only color that was in there was white. I tried to explain it to her. I was like, it was like a Puff Daddy party in there. Like it was just everything was white. And my ex-wife got violently ill in the middle of the night and threw up Pepto-Bismol and carrots all over your apartment. And I that was the first, because I was talking about how because my current wife and I were on our way to see Dave and his current wife on a road trip a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so weird. This is the first time they're going to be meeting you. And I said, please don't throw up all over their house. Don't throw
That's right.
Don't throw up all over their house. Oh, that totally happened. Oh, that was so terrible. Man,
it was
that was so terrible from so many angles. Yeah,
but it was
no, it was
you
terrible.
Can't really
we
fault
can say
people
terrible
for that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't remember.
Oh,
that's one of the things that becomes a funny story.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's funny. It is funny. Oh man, just thinking of the parties involved in that and what all was going down. Oh, it's crazy. So yeah.
But that was your last big. That second iteration of PLMR, was that your last kind of big creative foray?
Yeah.
I was sad when that went. And some of that even survived. Did that begin in Hawaii even? Or because there was at least one from down there, maybe more.
I think that was the first version of WPLMR. I took that with me to Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Because I had recorded I think I recorded one of the final episodes of, or maybe I was I started WPLMR. Was that right? Because I have episodes, because Larry worked with me on those episodes.
Yeah.
And
that was similar to mine to Philip in that he was going to be the staff writer. I think the term is used again.
Yeah. And maybe he didn't like that term. That
yeah,
title.
I know. Well, I wonder if that was us trying to
maybe
make
that's
it happen
what it was.
or him trying to make it happen, but it never seemed to stick. Well, I guess none of the projects really seemed to stick altogether. But
no, none of them did. I mean, yeah, that's... So for those longtime listeners that are coming back to this first episode of whatever this podcast ends up being called.
Yeah, hopefully we make it past either.
Yeah.
Let's make it past 30 somehow. Because that's the record. I think 29 actually is the... I want to say.
So we would need to make it to 30.
I'll double check because I definitely want somehow to make have there be Palmer's pick corners of this podcast that I think will be largely involving movies, though I'm sure we'll talk about other things. I mean, we're talking a lot about ourselves today, and that might happen from time to time. But when we first talking about this, it was kind of an idea to keep in touch more regularly, but also just share stuff with each other, and then hopefully maybe find some other like-minded individuals to enjoy them with us.
Yeah, no, I and I'm totally down for that. I think that's a great. I like this how we're just kind of keeping it organic at this point, because then it could be anything. I think if we, I think that's part of my problem too. Is I get bored because I feel like things start getting stale because we fit into one format so much.
Oh yeah.
So the more organic, I guess, we can keep it, the better it'll be. I mean, maybe there'll be some inspiration at some point down the line. I'll write some sketches and we can record those. Those are always fun. And you never know.
When I find, I spent about 10 years, I played music since I was a kid, like imitating Buddy Holly and stuff. And then later Pearl Jam around that cabin campfire, and eventually writing my own music and stuff. But there was a process too of just playing out a ton, and I did not write necessarily it's like folk pop rock, I don't know, but sometimes it was not always accessible. It was my therapy, in public. So, but eventually over time I found ways to make it entertaining, and at a certain point that became a priority of mine, of being able to put on a good show and still being creatively satisfied. But a lot of that came from like taking note of the things that worked well, and it's like, okay, let's do that,
right,
and let's make that kind of a part of the show, or at least an arrow in your quiver. Is that
yeah, expression? Yeah. I don't know, you're making like the jerk off hand gesture behind you.
I was trying to put like green arrow. Yeah, no, I am. It looks yeah. I don't know how the right.
Yeah,
we're talking.
It's like if you were in a movie theater, you'd be jerking the guy off.
Yeah, behind you. I mean, he'd have to be really well endowed because I have short arms. But
yeah.
Anyway, so I think as we stumble across things that are worth returning to, we can make them quivers in our arrow or arrows in our quiver. Jesus.
Make our arrows quiver.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. With that.
So let's see. So that pretty much brings people up to speed in terms of who we are and how we know each other and what we might do with this show. It's, we've gone on for a little while, and I'm not really concerned about a specific length, because I know the podcasts that I enjoy, I mostly tune in just to hear the people chat and enjoy the personalities, and I'm happy when they're longer. But I feel like we should do one more thing and then maybe wrap it up for now. Do you want to talk more about names or dig into that 1999 list?
Oh man,
we could do both, I guess. We should look at that 99 list.
We should definitely do the 99 list. Do you want to talk about though, like what led to this podcast was?
Oh, sure.
I mean, we've referenced we've referenced like
everything
the road trip a couple times. So like recently, my wife and I got to see Dave and his wife in Minnesota a couple weeks ago, from the time of this recording, and it was the first time we had seen each. Like it was the first time they met my wife.
Yeah,
and,
in person. We're talking on video chat now, so I'd met her on video chat, but that was probably the last time I'd seen you either in person or online in years.
Yeah. I hadn't seen you in person since you had moved out to Minnesota. I think Ash had asked me that, and I couldn't figure out. That's Ash is a nickname.
Yeah, I got to come up with one of those too from Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. I'll have to ask my wife what her preferred is, because there's a couple that come to mind. Ooh. I'm going to go with The Bride for now. We might change it, but she would like that.
Okay.
I'm going to call her my bride.
Okay.
No, because that's possessive. She would not like that. Let me call her.
Yeah, just don't say my. Why don't you call her The Bride?
I'll try that. Okay, yeah. Or I could call her Buffy, though I don't think her Buffy is her favorite. She'd rather be Cordelia. Anyway, I'll ask her what she prefers. Or Sydney, after Sydney Bristow. She loves that character.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get her involved and make sure she's properly represented.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get better than Ash, because that is pretty badass.
So which is a movie she would never watch. She could never. She could never watch that movie ever.
I watched those. You loaned me those when I moved back to Ohio. I'd never seen those, and that's I think going to be a big part of. I think that's something I'm looking forward to. That is based on the time that has elapsed. Because if we saw each other every week or so for the last so many years, we'd have talked about a lot of the things I think we'll talk about on mic, and be able to say, like, have you seen this thing? And because you would do that anyways when we did see each other often, and I can only imagine the stock store you have of of books and movies and TV shows.
Oh, there's so much
to hit me to.
So much. But we were talking, and it was so awesome because I had never heard this story before, and I didn't even remember it. But because we were talking about like, how like it's so great to catch up, and it's so great to talk about all this stuff, and we were talking about projects and how fun it was to work on projects. And you told me the anecdote with our friend Katie, who said I didn't remember this conversation happening until you had reminded me about it. It was during the time of Palmer's Picks, and she had said, how do I spend more, like, how do I hang out with Dave more? And what did I tell her?
She said, basically, you got to make a show.
You got to make a show.
Which and
that's,
so true.
And that, like,
it's true that, and
but it's like, it was so like awesome. It's like, why not?
Comment and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Why not, like, get to create something while you're hanging out? And so that led to 2 really late nights of us staying up and drinking beer and, like, reminiscing and talking about awesome stuff and listening to good music, and led to this idea of just, like, us having a podcast and as an excuse to hang out and bullshit.
Absolutely.
Which I think is perfect. So
I've really enjoyed now, this already.
Like, yeah. So it's almost 20 years since our first project. Like, it's just shy of 20 years. Well, if we did,
yeah, no, you're right. Because if
we did, like, Palmer's Picks in, like, 99, 98.
Yeah,
99.
Yeah, it was like January of 99. It's so funny.
And we're just shy of that.
Wow. It's great timing for a lot of reasons too, but I'm also really fresh with a lot of these projects because I had for the last few years I've been trying to kind of rescue these things. I've been making projects, mostly movies and I guess music and some other types of stuff since I saw those Frankenstein movies and Frankendrack that we talked about earlier, and even before that, I've talked too much about it today. Maybe get into some of it another time. But I've been trying to preserve them because I left some stuff in my parents' house, and the basement is like kind of one of those. I've heard the term my wife's family, dirty basements. There's the nice basement, there's the dirty basement, and the tapes were in the dirty basement, so they got moldy. And I was like, oh no! So I became paranoid and wanting to digitally preserve things. And I had a big hard drive crash in 2013. That I've only just recently kind of finished sorting through all that data. But so I've just been I've been seeing these projects, and I've been trying to actually kind of go in chronological order and create dates and relationships to know what I was working on when and with whom. And so it was a nice time for me to revisit those things with someone else, because I'm revisiting them on my own and sharing them. You know, most of the stuff I'm finding right now is just stuff I've forced my siblings to be in. So I'll send them to them, and they can be like, oh, wow, that's like that weird baseball, wiffle ball, Sergio Leone movie that I was telling you about.
Oh, that's so awesome. I got to see that.
It's weird. Oh, yeah, here, I'll make note to send that to you. It's so stupid and violent.
Oh, it's so awesome, though.
But in terms... Oh, no, we haven't... Remind me of that chronology thing when it comes to 1999, because I have a list thing to mention. But sorry, that was another of the Long Walk for a Short Drink by David Ullman. But you were saying
that's a great title. Long Walk for a Short Drink, or maybe just a long. Walk.
That's it. Yeah, no, Long Walk for a Short Drink. I like. Is that an expression you've always used? I've never heard it before.
I got that from Ash. Ash.
Really?
She's like.
Well, it might be one of those
for a short drink.
It might be one of the, because you were saying all these sorts of sayings that she has from a certain part of Pennsylvania. I forget which. Is it like the Pittsburgh area?
Yeah, the Western Pennsylvania. She's a Yinzer. Fucking Yinzers.
Oh, that's awesome.
There, I just alienated a whole population right there.
You know that
Warsh,
a lot of
in the creek.
I like the that feels very much too like a way out of a podcast, like a way that's like an acknowledgement. Okay, I just went on and on forever, but it seems like a very much like a wrap up type. Like that's the end of the show. Like, well, I guess that was a long walk for a short drink. We'll talk to you next week or whatever.
Oh yeah, I like that.
That's a top contender for me. It also doesn't tether us to any particular subject, which is nice.
Yeah, well, because I got to thinking about that today of how, like, we're going to talk about all kinds of geeky stuff. You know, like,
I think it will be pretty geek-centric. And if only in the sense of being, like, psychotically focused on a certain thing. Like, I don't know if it's truly... Like, it's not fashionable geeky to be into Universal Monsters of the 30s, because I literally don't know another human being. I can't even seem to find them online. It's like, but I'm super into that. So that's one of those definitions of geeky, right? Or nerdy, where it's just like you're just really into things. And I've heard the expression, interested is interesting. So I think there'll be that kind of geekiness abounding in our conversations.
No, I'm kind of digging A Long Walk for a Short Drink. I think that's a great title.
I like it too. I'm on board for that.
I mean, it's, I like it. All right, so you want to talk 1999?
Yeah, let's work our way to that tagline. Let's have a long walk and have that short drink. Oh, so the one thing I wanted to tell you about 99 related.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's not actually a long walk. It's a short one, but based on trying to find some of those timelines in I say work, but I mean that in like a really lowercase W, it's pretty silly stuff, some of it, but just the stuff I made over my life. And so I decided that one of the ways that I could help pinpoint dates was stuff that I was into at the time, because my influences were always very clearly apparent in my dress and even mannerisms and stuff. So I started to make a spreadsheet of, I'd look at IMDb for I think it's probably based on the most popular movies of the year, but I would then go through and copy. If I knew I saw them in a theater, I would put them on this list. And I started back. I started in 1990, but I do remember seeing Return of the Jedi in theater at Great Oaks.
Oh man!
I only remember the part where they've just been reunited, the three heroes, and they're in front of Jabba. And the Jabba is subtitled. He's talking to Luke and Han.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I got to put that one on there. But the bummer of this of me mentioning this is I'm only up to the end of 1997. So I haven't talked about 99 yet.
Oh, man.
Or haven't talked.
This is good.
98 was a good year for me too, but not. Anyway, so 99. So you're looking at Wikipedia. I'll let you guide me through this, or I'll ask you
Let me do this. I'll just share my desktop again. How's that?
Oh,
share
yeah.
Screen.
Man, how do we want to do this? Because to talk about every one of these movies is just so overwhelming. But
so do you see like the 1999 in film?
Yeah.
All right. So this is Wikipedia does a pretty good job of this, because the first thing it has is just like the top 10 grossing films from that year. So like, you look at it and you're like, Episode 1,
Star Wars
shocker.
Episode 1, yeah.
Sixth Sense, Toy Story 2, The Matrix,
Tarzan.
Well, the Disney animated Tarzan.
I just would not have thought that would have been up there.
Look at Toy Story 2, like beating out an actual conventional Disney animated film there.
Oh,
that year.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like starting to solidify. This is really where because they had done Toy Story 1 and then Bug's Life and then Toy Story 2. And it's like they came back with a sequel and like it still was successful. Notting Hill, as far as like your rom-coms.
You know who loves that movie that you wouldn't think, or at least did, is Jackson.
Really?
Yeah.
That does not surprise me, actually.
Really?
Not at all. I don't know why that doesn't surprise me.
Or at least more aware of it than I was, which I actually, especially when I was younger, I really loved romantic comedy. I don't like the term rom-com. So, anyway,
really?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have problems with acronyms. Or not necessarily acronyms, but shortenings of words.
Abbreviations,
Yeah, depends.
I do too.
It depends. But I didn't want to use it myself. I didn't want to start.
World is not enough.
That's a James
American
Bond.
Beauty. That's a James Bond. American Beauty, which ended up winning Best Picture that year.
Yeah, I remember.
And then Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Like
that's the second one.
That's the top
or the first.
That's number 10.
No, I mean, is that the first Austin Powers or the second one?
That's the first one.
Oh wow.
The second one was. Why did I think
the first one is in 97? I challenge you.
Oh wait, maybe that is.
These are the kind of things that I know instead of important things. Because it's not even like I even love Austin. Yeah, Man of Mystery 97 is the first one.
Oh, it's the second film. Oh yeah, Man of Mystery.
I wish I knew other things, but I suppose it'll serve me well in this podcast.
All right, But I'm just gonna do a quick scroll. We're not gonna spend a lot of time going down through this, but like it starts in January.
Well, before
8th.
you do that, okay, so we'll see those other movies again. I just figured let's throw out ones that we really liked. We don't have to really get into it.
Okay.
Do you want to list them and say Saw or not Saw, or just kind of move more quickly?
Oh, there's so many through here. I don't know if we're gonna.
Well, actually, it's not that many months though. Just throw them out.
All right.
We'll say either we saw it or we didn't, and some will have stuff to say. Like
right.
A Civil Action, I did see. I remember Robert Duvall.
I think I've seen that.
It was important to him.
Yeah. At First Sight.
No. Video maybe.
Oh, that's Val Kilmer and Mira Sorvino. Yeah, I've totally seen that.
Affliction. I've never seen with Nick Nolte.
Hillary and
it's Paul
Jackie.
Schrader. Hillary and Jackie, I did not. Thin Red Line. Always wanted to. Never.
Thin Red Line.
Have you ever seen that one?
That's the one.
That's.
I have not seen that
Malick,
one, but I've heard that one.
I've always wanted to, but I just never been in the right space. Gloria,
Still Crazy, A Cool Dry Place, and She's All That.
I remember A Cool Dry Place because of Joey Adams, maybe. Yeah. She's All That.
So
that's January. She's All That. That was when
January.
Miramax took a turn from being the Miramax of the 90s to being like that was their sort of bid for that kind of like in the Canon Films documentary where they started to kind of go for a different thing, like when they were trying to make Superman 4 and just kind of breaking the mold that made them successful. Whereas for them, that was kind of like these schlocky B pictures. But for Miramax, they made these, classy films and kind of cutting edge dramas and stuff like that. But She's All That is essentially like an 80s romantic comedy. And then that changed their whole deal. Anyway, Payback. I liked that movie a lot. I was a big Mel Gibson fan.
I liked that a lot.
Until
and Rushmore, I mean,
years.
that's...
yeah. I saw that later, but I dig that as the first... Well...
That's like the first Wes Anderson, right?
I think Bottle Rocket is
the
first, but that
Rocket,
was the one to kind of take... I mean, this one has Bill Murray, right? Rushmore.
Yep.
Simply Irresistible. That's... Oh, that was just a romantic comedy with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But I saw it, liked it.
Blast from the Past. There's another Brendan Fraser movie, The Mummy, making it to the top 10.
So when did Brendan Fraser sneak in this?
Message in a Bottle. You got Kevin Costner, romantic comedy.
I never saw that one. Is that a comedy one or is that more like drama? I didn't see that one.
I guess
that.
it is
Paul
labeled
Newman
as a drama, huh?
Yeah, it seemed like it was. My favorite Martian. Yeah, I didn't see that one.
The Christopher Lloyd reboot right there. See, we were rebooting even back in 1999. Jawbreaker, Rose McGowan there. Office Space came out in 99.
Yeah. I did not see it in 1999, but I've since discovered and love that movie.
20 Dates, 200 Cigarettes, Muppets from Space.
I've never
is
gotten
February.
into the Muppets movies. That's going to have to be a thing we do at some point.
Oh, man, yeah. Ash doesn't like the Muppet movies either.
Oh. But you do, don't you? Or
I love the Muppet movies.
The Breaks.
Muppets from Space is a good one. The Breaks.
I don't recognize that. The Breaks.
The Other Sister, right there. Juliette Lewis.
Yeah.
8 millimeter. That
8 millimeter is rough.
Just,
that's like about the snuff film.
Yeah, that's like a one-timer. You don't need to watch that one again.
Analyze this. That's when you go back to.
So now we're getting into March. The Corruptor, Cruel Intentions.
So March, we were making Palmer's Picks as of January. So this is all the era of Palmer's Picks. So this is what we'd have been talking about if we were not talking about library titles.
Yep. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Cruel Intentions, though, that came up because that's the remake of the Dangerous Liaisons, which was one of Bart, I think was her name. That was one of her picks, and I remember her mentioning it was in theaters at the time. That was
Absolutely.
a pretty okay movie. Lock, Stock was cool, as I recall. That was a real different kind of vibe. That first Guy Ritchie movie, or at least the first big one in the States.
And it led to Snatch, which that one is still like, God, that movie's fantastic. And we'll see Ben Affleck.
Brad Pitt.
We'll be seeing Brad Pitt on this list in
Affleck's
the 1999.
in 200 Cigarettes.
Yep. Deep End of the Ocean.
Oh yeah, I had a big thing for Michelle Pfeiffer too. So there's the cinematic sort of actor luminaries of my youth would be Bruce Lee Jean-Claude Van Damme, Clint Eastwood, Mel Gibson, and Michelle Pfeiffer, and Christian Slater. But like, I would watch. Isn't that so random?
That list is so spectacular, and it sums you up so well. It's perfect.
I mean, there's some other things thrown in there, but
and Michelle Pfeiffer. You like name off all these random people, and Michelle Pfeiffer.
I was big into especially at Mel Gibson and Michelle Pfeiffer at that earlier, like in the early '90s. But I was catching up on all their movies and video. But so I was still watching every Michelle Pfeiffer movie at that time. So I saw The Deep End of the Ocean, which I didn't love. Anyway,
a sequel to Carrie.
Did you ever see that? Because
I have not.
I didn't. I read about it when I was getting into the Stephen King thing recently, but I didn't look into it. Baby Geniuses. Woo.
Baby Geniuses, Wing Commander. Those were flops.
Wing Commander.
True Crime. True Crime.
Oh, that was
directed by Clint Eastwood.
Oh, Dennis Leary. Nah, I can't pretend I actually know what that is. Force of Nature. There it is.
Forces of Nature.
And Sandy Bullock. That's a fun movie.
The King and I.
King and I.
Doug's first movie.
The King and I with Jodie Foster and Chow Yun-fat. I feel like that was.
Yep.
Chow Yun-fat's a big. He was a Hong Kong action star with John Woo movies. Came over here. Ed TV. I've always heard great things about that, but never seen it.
Oh, that's a good one. The Mod Squad and The Matrix came out. Was the last one to come out in March. Like
I remember watching The Matrix with not in theaters, but with you for the first time in your basement bedroom.
Oh, I love that movie. Hugely influential. Cookie's Fortune, The Out of Towners, A Walk on the Moon, Go. I remember a lot of people being into Go.
I have Go on VHS. I remember seeing it once, but I don't remember it super well. A Walk on the Moon. No. Yeah, I'm aware of some of those, but I haven't seen it. Never Been Kissed. Yeah,
Never Been Kissed. Later. All About My Mother. I don't know what that is.
I don't recognize that.
Goodbye Lover, Life.
I don't recognize that either.
That's
Life.
Eddie
I do
Murphy
remember
and
that.
Martin Lawrence.
Oh no, I was thinking the one with Roberto Benigni. I like it.
Yeah.
I like those two guys. I'm not sure if I ever saw that one.
Friends and Lovers, Lost and Found, Pushing Tin. There's another Kevin Costner movie.
Oh yeah.
Oh no. I'm thinking of Tin Cup. Pushing Tin is the one with John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton, where they they go out and watch when the planes land, it like blows them across the runway.
I don't know if I saw that one. I have had a version to Billy Bob Thornton, so I think I'm gonna skip that.
Yeah, that's fair. Entrapment. Now, if Michelle Pfeiffer is in your list of like influential, Catherine Zeta-Jones's ass in the trailer for Entrapment, where they like show her do the laser dance.
Yeah,
like, I mean, I could still replay that in my head.
I think any guy of a certain age, and probably women too, but I've just never seen women do it. Women into women, I mean, or maybe even not, because how can you deny it? But you can see me, right? I can't see you. But it's always like if you do this. So do with your hand what it is, what happens in that shot. But I got to be able to see you.
She like comes in. And
no, I need to see. Do it with your arm. I got to see it because I have the suspicion it's going to be. Right now, I still got your screen.
Because here, let's stop sharing. There, how's that? Am I back now?
Sorry. So okay, do it.
She like goes in and
there
like just like
there it is. Yep.
Like goes up and her ass is like at one point and she like real slow like comes down goes and
that's always the same thing. Everyone uses their whole hand and kind of so if you're at home, kind of put your palm your fingers together, kind of like a karate chop, and then kind of put your arm in front of you where your hand is perpendicular to your chest, and then kind of bend at the shoulder, kind of dip down.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a universal. I bet we could find memes of that because
absolutely.
That is so. I don't know. I don't remember anything else about that movie, but that scene.
Yeah, and that was in the trailer.
Yeah,
I remember that was like the bulk of the trailer was that scene.
That shot. I mean, oh my god. Okay.
Yeah. She's in like the leather jumpsuit. It's so crazy.
I think it's spandex, which makes it all the better.
Yeah. Man.
Speaking of idle hand, that's the next one on the
idle hands. Yeah.
I don't think I saw that one, but I was aware of it.
The Mummy, Election. That's a big one.
You'd think I would like The Mummy because of my stated obsession for the Universal monster movies, but that one's so removed from what those movies are like. It's kind of more funny. I don't know. It's just
I really like Brendan Fraser movies.
Oh, really? Nice.
Like Encino Man. I went to the theater and saw Encino Man with my brother.
I remember seeing that at Great Oaks too. That's where I saw that one.
And he was just, I don't know. I like, and this isn't the only Brendan Fraser movie, like, because we saw like Blast from the Past on there. I like Blast from the Past a lot. I like The Mummy a lot.
Airheads.
Airheads was so awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed that movie too. He's in a movie about called Gods and Monsters that maybe came out the year before, around that time, that is about the director of the 1931 Frankenstein and 32 Bride of Frankenstein. And he's excellent in that. It's just like a straight drama. But yeah, I like Brendan Fraser. Have you ever seen that thing of the GIF online of him clapping kind of wildly at a Oscar ceremony?
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's what I always picture when I see him now.
There's I think it's Screen Rant. It might be Screen Rant on YouTube. They put out they have a series of why Hollywood won't cast X anymore.
Oh.
And they have an episode of like why they won't why Brendan Fraser doesn't make any movies anymore. And they just like list off all these reasons that make sense why they don't get cast in anything anymore. I can't remember any of Brendan Fraser's off the top of my head, but there's an episode on why they don't give him movies anymore.
I bet that's a big part of it, that GIF.
Probably. I know that so GIF foolish. Is in that video.
It's like he can't, his hands don't meet, and he's like really bizarrely excited. What comes out? Oh, Election. That was a fun movie.
Election.
Oh, that's Alexander Payne, the guy that did Sideways later stuff. Trippin'.
Oh, nice.
Endurance, I don't recognize. Midsummer Night's Dream. I saw.
Look who's in that. Michelle Pfeiffer's in there.
Yeah. Ghost Dog. Oh, Ghost Dog. That is a cool movie. Jim Jarmusch, Northeast Ohio guy.
Ghost Dog is one of those things it's one of those movies because we talked about like box art, right?
Yeah.
And I can picture the box art for Ghost Dog just in the sense that I used to make fun of it religiously because I didn't get it, because it's just this picture of Forrest Whitaker like in profile, and it's like kind of black, and he's like standing out in the center of the box, and it says Ghost Dog on it, and I was just like,
the way it's Ghost Dog, the Way of the Samurai, which once you see those things together, and Forrest Whitaker in a hoodie,
and he's got a samurai sword like cutting across them, and like, and I used to just belligerently make fun of the movie based on the box art.
The people would bring it up to the counter and you'd be like, what?
Oh, probably. I used to do that at a Blockbuster.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Is it Wilbur? Is that the
one with George McFly? Might be the wrong one. I've never actually seen that. I think it's Wilfred, maybe. Anyway, but
Wilfred, yeah, that's it. And I used to
Glover, that's his name.
I would make fun of people for bringing that up. I'd be like, "You're gonna rent this for real?" And I'd be like, "Wilfred!" Like I would say it really loud so that everybody else in the line knew they were renting that movie. Like, oh, I was such a dick.
You were like High Fidelity. You were a one-man High Fidelity when you were back there. Like a grumpy old guy where he's like, "Oh, hey, I used to watch your show on TV. Oh, really? Why didn't you come on it?
Why did you email me then? Son of a bitch."
Oh, Wilfred? It's like when the guy comes in wanting to get Stevie Wonder. I just called to say I love you. He wouldn't sell it to him. He's like, "Go to the mall." There's no way your daughter likes that song. Oh, is she in a coma? Anyway. I like thinking of you as or like Clerks or something where you're the Randall of the.
Yeah, I was a dick. It's just, but I watched Ghost Dog. Ghost Dog is like amazing. It's so good. Like all the Jim Jarmusch stuff is good.
Yeah, I remember pretty interesting.
Corey told me about Dead Man, and I watched Dead Man, and I really like Dead Man.
I rewatched that in the last 2 years or something, and that was really fun to watch, like late at night. There's certain movies that I know and that I love. Eraserhead is one of them, probably the prime example where I'm not as familiar with the movie itself as you would think. And a lot of times it's because I would put it on when it was really dark and it was late, and I would kind of drift in and out of sleep, and they're kind of dreamlike movies like that and Dead Man, where that's part of my love for them, is like there's stuff I don't always remember, and there's a general kind of half waking state that I remember that a lot of the middle of it is. And Dead Man is great. I also really liked Winona Ryder when I was that age, and she was in a lot of stuff. And so I watched all her movies, and one of her movies was, or at least she was on the cover art for, was a movie called Night on Earth. It's a Jim Jarmusch movie. It takes place only in cabs, but all around the world, and so it's in various languages, and that's really fun. Honestly, every one of his movies Stranger Than Paradise is the one he got known for, and that's really fun. God, what is he up to? I hope he's still making great stuff that I can catch up with.
Dead Man, like you watch Dead Man and you're just like, damn it, Johnny Depp, like can't you just do that more of that, and less of like what you're doing now, and stop beating your wives, like just stop beating your wives, stop smuggling dogs into Australia because that shit's not cool either. And maybe just start making good movies again. Yeah. How about you break up with Tim Burton? Let's start there.
I want him to work more with Kevin Smith, like the Tusk character, the Gila Point, who's coming back in Yoga Hosers.
That is probably one of his best characters in the last decade. It's that good, and it just break up with Tim Burton. I think both of your careers would benefit from breaking up.
I used to watch every Johnny Depp movie too, and that was that was back then. I think it really started to turn with Pirates, but almost every movie he made was super interesting like that, for one reason or another. So it comes from Ghost Dog to Star Wars Episode 1.
Star Wars, which we'll pretend like.
We never really talked about it, and it would take too long to really get into now. But I did watch on your recommendation those was it Red Letter?
Oh yeah, they're fantastic. The Red Letter reviews of the prequels.
Yeah, in case somehow someone hearing this doesn't know about them, they're so worthwhile. Can you probably describe better what they are than I could?
They are probably some of the best film analysis that I've ever seen.
And it's really smart what they're saying, especially stuff about story and whatnot.
Yeah, the guide. Well, I really like too where he will take a scene from the original trilogy and say why this was awesome, and then how Lucas bastardized it in the prequels.
Yeah, in a really ineffective way.
In an ineffective way. I guess one of the comparisons that stick out in my mind in those is he talks about the lightsaber fights, and he's like, the lightsaber fights in the original trilogy were very passionate and passion driven and like real sword fights. And he shows the shot of like Luke just repeatedly like hitting Vader over and over and over again, and he's like, and then in the prequels, it just turned into like fancy laser dancing, and then they would show like this like over choreographed, but it's just really, really smart, intelligent, critical film analysis that's told through a character, which happens to be a man that keeps women chained up in his basement. Like, so you got to take that part with a grain of salt and just really like let the film analysis come through, because I don't know. I just feel like it gives a voice to why the prequels suck so much. You want to, as a Star Wars fan, you want to say, oh, the prequels suck so much because they're just terrible. But that doesn't, unless you grew up with Star Wars, you don't really understand it. I've had people say, I've watched the prequels and I like them because they weren't Star Wars fans, or kids really like the prequels because they're made for right kids
age and everything,
and he really gives a voice, a legitimate, thought out voice to why the prequels are just terrible as far as Star Wars movies go. He doesn't, which is good too, because he doesn't like really bash them. I mean, I'm sure he does in some parts. He doesn't bash them for being bad movies. He bashes them for being bad Star Wars movies. Like,
oh yeah, that's right, yeah. And it's done in that so honest. I mean, it's like it's a pretty, as you say, it's a really sophisticated criticism, but it's presented in this kind of ultra lowbrow way of a guy that kind of talks like this, and he can't even really get the video right, or so he makes it seem. And right. And it seems like he's, talking basically between like screen grabs and clips from the movie, talking over them, juxtaposed with this like kind of gritty home video of him like making pizzas and stuff, but also sometimes, there's someone chained up in the basement. And they're like great. 2 hours long. Like each one's like 2 hours long, and they're movie, they're so good, amazing. So if you ever needed good evidence of why the prequels are not good Star Wars movies, definitely, like, they're entertaining, they're worth watching, they're definitely more entertaining than the actual prequels, like the movies they review. I also really like the documentaries on those discs, because they're not so, because I wanted to like the movies but didn't, and I'm always been interested in the stories behind movies, making them myself and stuff, and I don't like episode 1, but I actually do really like the documentary, at least on the
it's
DVD,
great documentary,
because it's like there's no talking heads, there's nobody like trying to speak for what they were trying to do or any of that, which I often enjoy that as well, but it all just sort of, it's like a documentary that just shows the process as it unfolds, and there's a lot of clips from that he uses to good effect to
Yep. And that's another that's another piece that really sticks out is even in that documentary, like when the first time they watched the rough cut of episode 1, and like they all come out and they're all like kind of quiet, and they're all like kind of shaking their heads like, what do we do? And like even Lucas is like, maybe somebody should have told, like, maybe there should have been somebody telling me when to like dial it back a little bit.
You could tell that he thought, and I'm sure they made it better than it was at that point. But I'm looking at the people that star in the movie off to the right of the title, and I never knew that Sofia Coppola was in that, the director and Francis Ford Coppola's daughter.
Yeah,
and Keira Knightley. So they were they were like the queen stand-ins, or the doppelgangers for her.
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing.
And I think that would be definitely Keira Knightley. I could see that. Yeah. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, I had no idea, because I mean that's 1999. Is it? It's not long after, like 2000 or early 2000s that. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. When Sofia Coppola does Lost in Translation, that might be a bit later.
Oh, that might. Well, let's see. Love Letter, Straight Story, Notting Hill.
Straight Story is I'm David Lynch. Even though I've slept through Eraserhead a lot, I do. I love most of David Lynch's movies, but that's the only one I think I've maybe only seen one time, because it's so not David Lynch. Do you ever see that one?
That's the one where the guy rides a tractor across the country, right?
Across the country, yeah. It's a good little film, but it's just not at all like what you want to see from him. There's Notting Hill, which we talked
Notting Hill, 13th Floor, Instinct, Austin Powers, the sequel there. General's Daughter, An Ideal Husband. There's Tarzan, Big Daddy came out that year. South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut.
I never saw Big Daddy in its entirety. Eventually I saw South Park.
That's like the cusp of like him stopping making Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison type movies and more into like family type movies. I like Big Daddy a lot. It's a good one.
Oh, cool. I think actually we have it on VHS from The Bride.
Awesome. Wild Wild West. That's like a great like Kevin Smith story.
That's a steaming pile of shit. That movie.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever watched that movie in its entirety, but I know enough about it just from the Kevin Smith story about the giant spider robot.
How the development of Superman Lives became somehow Wild West. Oh, look at it. Okay, so
Summer of Sam.
I think I saw that and liked that. I got into Spike Lee for a while, but I've not seen all his movies.
American Pie. Yeah. Arlington Road, Eyes Wide Shut.
I remember that coming out because that was right after he passed, right?
Well, you know what we have to do now, right?
No.
We have to fuck.
Oh, yeah.
That's how that ends. We have to fuck. That's the last line of that movie.
That's right. Oh man, that should be the closer of the podcast. Not what a long walk for a short train.
Well, you know what we got to do now, don't you? What? We have to fuck. And she says it like that.
I can do the what. Oh man, I've been having so much water. I can't laugh that hard. It's funny though, because that one of the podcasts I like is Kevin Smith's producing partner Scott Mosier has a side podcast that he does very rarely with this guy Matt Myra from the Nerdist Network, and at some point they felt that they needed a catchphrase for the end of their podcast and didn't have one, and arbitrarily picked some line from the movie that Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg did together. So at a certain point when they decide they're done, they say, we end this podcast as we end each podcast with in the immortal words of the two of the greatest actors of our time, let it rain or make it rain or something. It's so arbitrary. Ours would be much better. It's like, we should do now. Or it's like, what we've got to do now, I think. Or, I actually have the book for that sitting right next to me. I'm going to find it.
That last exchange is?
It's like a screenplay / the story it was built on. I was in a real Kubrick phase for a while, and so I bought all these things with some income tax return money.
All right, you look for that, and I'm going to keep going down this list.
I got it. Okay. She says,
you got it.
It's Alice. Or no, they're saying about being together forever. Bill and Alice is... Anyway, but so she goes, let's not use that word forever. It frightens me. But I do love you, and there's something very important. Oh, wait. And there's something very important we need to do as soon as possible. What's that? Fuck. And then it says fini, like it's fancy in French.
I want to see if I can find the YouTube of that last line.
I remember. It's not going to be as good as your reading, but it's last in the
line.
Oh, it's interesting when you type in last line, it fills in, the most popular thing, and it was for Back to the Future.
Eyes Wide Shut, the final scene.
Yeah, just skip ahead to the last, 15 seconds. I bet it would be it. I feel like she doesn't say it as aggressively as we are, but I like our version better. It's just such an aggressive thing to say.
No, but I remember it being so striking.
Oh yeah, because you don't. Oh look, it's in French. It's French subtitled.
I can't hear it though.
Oh, you can't? I can't either, but there it is. Tripper. Boom.
Wait.
Credits.
Wait, playback devices. Let's go.
I wonder if it's in English.
Let's see here. She's much more breathier. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is kind of soft the way she says it. That's my memory anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just the shock of it, I think, affects our memory. Where it's just
he's like, what's that? Fuck. It's just
yeah, it's so matter of fact when she says it too.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Pretty hot.
It is hot. But that's how he ended this last movie.
Well, and remember that it opens too with her just taking off her dress.
Oh man.
Yeah, he was looking to shake things up on that one.
So Eyes Wide Shut, Lake Placid, The Wood, Drop Dead Gorgeous, The Haunting, Inspector Gadget.
Which of course Jackson was cut out of that movie, but
yeah. Deep Blue Sea. There's the Blair Witch. Came out in July.
Oh, see, I thought August. I was wrong.
The Iron Giant, which is still
great things about that. I've never seen it. Have you? Is it?
Yeah, I've seen it. It's good. Vin Diesel does the voice for the giant.
I know, that's what I've always.
The robot.
Oh, it's Gary Marshall. Oh no, that's the Runaway Bride.
Runaway Bride. Yeah. No, Iron Giant is Brad Bird. It was one of Brad Bird's last actual conventional animated films, because he went on to work with Pixar after that.
Yeah, is he the Incredibles guy?
He is.
I've never seen the Incredibles. Can you believe that?
Oh man,
I look forward to it, obviously, but
love Pixar. Dick.
I remember Dick. Did you see that one?
I'm trying to think. Cheryl.
I have a thing for Kirsten Dunst as well, so I watched all her movies, and that's the thing. One where it's the like these two ditzy girls somehow uncover Watergate. I think that's what it is. Instead of the way it actually happened.
Yeah, I know. I remember that now. Mystery Men. I was just thinking of Mystery Men not too long ago. This one is a movie that I really feel like was so far ahead of its time. This predated like the comic book movies of now, and it's got Paul Rubin in it, Pee Wee Herman, and I mean, just looking at this cast: Hank Azaria, Janine Garofalo, Eddie Izzard, Ben Stiller, Greg Kinnear, Bill Macy's in it. Let me see, Paul Rubin, Jeffrey Rush, Tom Waits is in it. It's just this fantastic movie that I feel like if Mystery, because it was kind of like this sleeper hit, cult classic-y kind of deal. It didn't do too well in the box office. It got some critical praise. I feel like if they were to make Mystery Men now, it would blow up because it just kind of like pokes fun at the whole superhero genre.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that makes. I actually haven't seen that one, but I was aware of what it was, mostly from the box art. But yeah, I bet you're right.
It's just really good. You should definitely give that one a try because I really like it a lot.
I'll write it down. Mystery Men.
Sixth Sense came out in '99. The Thomas Crown Affair, Bowfinger, Larry. That was one of Larry's favorites.
Yeah, people speak very highly of that. I did see it, but I don't remember it really well. I think I was mostly interested in Heather Graham at the time. I guess you can really tell what age I was when I talk about these movies.
All right, I mean, come on. I would watch Heather Graham. Like Heather Graham showed her boobs in Hangover, and you're like, yep, still got them.
I'm still on board. She's
still,
anytime.
Still got them.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Detroit Rock City, Mickey Blue Eyes, Teaching Miss Tingle.
Broken Down Place.
Look at this.
Claire Danes got a Claire Danes thing.
Universal Soldier: The Return.
Oh yeah, I was not. I love me some Jean-Claude Van Damme, but that's not a favorite. I don't return to that one. I do not return.
Into Deep, The 13th Warrior, fantastic movie. That's one of the best book adaptations, I think. Yeah.
Oh, just book adaptations, period?
Yeah, it really holds true to the book very, very well. It's a great movie. I really like that a lot. The Astronaut's Wife. Here's another later. Brendan Fraser. Look at this, Dudley Do-Right. You can see the whole fall of Brendan Fraser's career in this one year.
1999. Because he was riding high on that mummy stuff for a while. And that was the first one.
I mean, it's like there's Blast from the Past, and then which is like just this romantic comedy that's really quirky and weird, and it's got one of our favorites. Walken's in there. He plays the dad.
I think I saw it. That's produced by Alicia Silverstone. She was
and she stars in that.
Yeah, she was producing little cool movies like that around that time. I think her first one was Excess Baggage with Benicio del Toro, and I still really like that movie. It's just a little quirky movie like that as well, and Christopher Walken's in it, and she had a real fondness for Walken.
And then he sets up his meal ticket with the Mummy in '99, and he rides. That's really what he rides out into the sunset. Is that franchise, right? And then you got Dudley Do-Right, like right here. In a matter of months, you can see, like, oh, right, he's not going anywhere because we got Dudley Do-Right. The
Astronaut's Wife is okay. I saw that later with Johnny Depp and Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
But he was still making interesting stuff there.
The Muse, Chill Factor, Outside Providence, Love Stinks,
Is Outside Providence, does that have Alec Baldwin in it? Yes, that movie has the greatest insult. Alec Baldwin calls some kid an ass bag.
Is that the one where his like?
The one.
Is that the one where his kid is getting ready to go? Wait, Peter Farrelly, Robert Farrelly, screenplay, Sean.
Oh, it's a Farrelly brother.
Alec Baldwin. Is it? I gotta look and see what movie this is. Is this like? Is he getting ready to go? Like to college or something? His son is getting ready to go to college. Is that what that movie is?
I remember very little about it other than that. That's almost the only thing I remember. And I also
does he play this like gruff, like blue collar dad? And all right, because that's so funny that you're like he's got one of the best insults and it's called ass bag. He also has one of the best it's like my rule of thumb for lovemaking.
Oh, really?
Because he's like in that movie, because he's like having the birds and the bees talk with his son, and he's like, having sex is like going to Chinese dinner. It's not over till you both get your cookies. And I'm like, I remember that. That's brilliant. Like, yes, it's not over till you both get your cookies. Everybody gets their cookies.
Oh man. So there's only a handful of these movies that you read that I wasn't aware of in some way, but that one I kind of forgot, almost glossed over. I just remember that word, Providence. Stigmata is pretty cool.
Stigmata, Stir of Echoes, Blue Streak.
I like Martin Lawrence too. I do. I always find that.
Where's that at?
Very watchable. Blue Streak was a Martin Lawrence movie. And I just always enjoy his personality and comedy and stuff.
American Beauty, Breakfast of Champions, For the Love of the Game, Bicentennial Man, Double Jeopardy, Jacob the Liar. See, like, even their schlock, even their, like, there's the stuff that they're just like, we're just putting it out because it's got these names in it and we know it'll make money. Even that stuff is like relatively good.
Like that, they don't even make those kind of movies as often. I feel like.
Yeah. Then you got October 1, Adventures of Elmo and Grouchland.
Wow, right, is that theatrical?
Mystery Alaska, The Minus Man,
Three Kings is cool.
Yep.
David O. Russell stuff is always fun.
Random Hearts,
Boys Don't Cry was that's a rough movie, but I really love it. I watched it a little bit for a while. I really liked. Yeah, I was a big fan. And actually, Kimberly Pierce, I was so taken by her as the director of that movie. I was like, oh man, what's she gonna do? And she kind of fell off my radar. Couldn't even tell you another movie of hers. But when I watched, so I'm going through the Stephen King catalog, and when I read Carrie, I watched the Carrie from the 70s, but then there was the remake. There was 2 remakes, but one I couldn't get my hands on. But the most recent one with the girl from Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
That's directed by Kimberly Pierce. So I was just
Chloe Moritz something. She's got 3 names.
And I'm looking at Chloe Sveng-Hughes in Boys Don't Cry. But anyway, I particularly really like that movie, even though it's tough to watch.
There's a really great documentary. It used to be on Netflix. It might still be on there, but it's on the MPAA, and it's about the NC-17 rating. And
right.
So, like, Kimberly Pierce is one of the directors they talk to. They talk to Trey Parker and Matt Stone, but a bunch of directors who like kind of had to fight that system and avoid the NC-17 rating, and some of the stuff that they pegged to give Boys Don't Cry that like they tried to put the NC-17 rating on Boys Don't Cry, and but yeah, that documentary is great. It really will make you hate the MPAA.
I'm forgetting the title, and I feel like the
this film is not rated or something like that.
Rated. That's right. That's
the
one. Ooh, Fight Club.
Yep,
I remember.
Fight Club.
I remember you being resistant to Fight Club before you saw it, or maybe even after you saw it.
Yeah, like I was not into the idea of Fight Club at all. And you mentioned Bart. She was the one. Like, in hindsight, I realized it was a date, but it was not a date to me.
Oh, really?
And so we went out.
Usually that goes the other way around, at least in my life.
And it came out on Sweetest Day. And so we were, I remember we went to.
That's an Ohio phenomenon.
It is. But we went out and we were going to go see Fight Club because like Bart had made me read the Rolling Stone did an interview with Brad Pitt.
I remember he was wearing a dress, right?
He was wearing the dress in that, and because I just wasn't buying into it, and she's like, "No, you gotta do this." And so we were in Fight Club, and I remember looking around, and there was a bunch of couples there, and I was like, "I got to be the only dude that was drugged here by a chick to see this movie. Like all these other girls that are here probably got drugged here by their boyfriends." And then I watched the movie, and it like changed my life. You know?
Yeah. Oh man, that's I was in because I was Brad Pitt was among the people that I followed and watched all of his movies. And one of my favorites was Seven, which was his previous collaboration with David Fincher. And so I was just like, those two again, yeah. And fighting, I loved, martial arts type movies. And I don't know if I thought it was going to be that. I don't think I really cared, but I was definitely not prepared for what sort of mind fuck that was about to be, and how
and the other great
is.
thing, like, that was another one that had a crazy twist ending, and like that was still new in '99. Like you had Sixth Sense, you had Fight Club, American Beauty really ended on a twist, even though the first line like lets you know what's going to happen, but you don't expect it, and so many reasons.
Our buddy Corey, I don't know if you know this, but like when he was going through some romantic troubles a few years back, in kind of a life transition, he watched Fight Club every day. And
none of that surprises me at all.
Yeah. That's
the Omega Code, Bats.
Story of Us, which of course is I watched it because Michelle Pfeiffer, but it's also a kind of it's got the same structure. Rob Reiner did it as When Harry Met Sally, which I also really love.
Yeah.
But it's a one-timer. I only saw it the one time.
The Omega Code, Bats, Bringing Out the Dead, Crazy in Alabama, The Best Man, 3 to Tango, House on Haunted Hill, and Music of the Heart. So that gets us through.
Oh, and Music of the Heart I also did Wes Craven movies. I only got through the first Scream, but I started at the beginning. But that was his one. So that's interesting. 1999, you have David Lynch and Wes Craven both of them made their own only kind of straight movie, such as it is. It's funny that it happened at the same time.
The Bachelor, The Bone Collector, The Insider, Pokemon, the first movie.
Yeah. Anywhere But Here was an early Natalie Portman.
The Messenger, Anywhere But Here.
It's Dogma. Ooh, love that Dogma.
That's still my favorite, I think, Kevin Smith movie.
That is, that's outstanding.
Oh, it's so good. Light It Up, Liberty Heights, Sleepy Hollow.
I liked Sleepy Hollow. That was one of their early collaborations.
I can't Sleepy Hollow just because they never stopped making that. I think Sleepy Hollow is what solidified that look, like the Johnny Depp and why am I losing his name now? Tim Burton look.
Helena Bonham Carter, all that kind of
it solidified that. It was, and so then they just never stopped making that movie.
Yeah, that's true.
The World Is Not Enough, End of Days, Felicia's Journey, Flawless, Mansfield Park, Toy Story 2. There's November, and then we get into December. So now we're gonna get the big Oscar push, right?
Oh yeah, and that Cider House Rule.
Cider House Rule starts right out. Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo.
I love you to say that after the Oscar push. Ride with the Devil. I saw both. I saw the cinematic reason. The lie would be I saw it because I was interested in Ang Lee. Really, it was because Jewel was in it.
I know. Yep. You and Jewel.
Still love Jewel. I saw her at the Mall of America perform. She has this great. Actually, her new album is unbelievably great, and her memoir came out last year. But oh my God, that woman is stunning.
Oh, that's awesome.
And talented.
Anna and the King, Stuart Little, Any Given Sunday, Man on the Moon.
Oh, I remember.
I love Man on the Moon
in particular. Yeah, I was just thinking about that because I was hearing someone tell stories about Andy Kaufman, and I was like, I remember that movie so well as a thing, but I can't remember the things that happened in that movie at all. I can't picture Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman at all.
Oh man, you should give that one a rewatch then, because it's.
I remember
there's stuff from that sticks with me.
Oh, good. Oh, Magnolia.
Other than Courtney Love is in it.
Oh, really?
There's another great documentary on Netflix called Soaked in Bleach, which is like the rehashing of the Kurt Cobain. It's like it's the private investigator that she hired around Kurt Cobain's quote unquote suicide, who ultimately said, I can no longer, I'm going to continue to investigate this case, but I'm not going to take your money anymore because you are one of my prime suspects.
Ooh, and that's in the movie?
And that's so this documentary, they did there was the older documentary called Kurt and Courtney.
Yeah, I used to have that on VHS.
And he has like one segment in that documentary about how this is possibly something that happened. Well, Soaked in Bleach is his case file with like dramatizations, like people playing them in between him talking and there being interviews. Oh, wow. But one of the last scenes is the chief of police of Seattle, who was chief of police at the time that Kurt Cobain, quote unquote, killed himself, on record, like on the documentary, saying, I'm no longer chief of police, so I don't have the authority to do this. But if I were, I would reopen this case and reinvestigate it. Like, wow. I mean, so I'm pretty confident Courtney Love had something to do with Kurt Cobain's death. But there's the Man on the Moon. There's the Long Walk for a Short Trip.
That's the
Galaxy Quest.
I never saw that one. I'm aware of it. Is that good like Mystery Men is, or is it similar?
It's fantastic.
Sam Rockwell.
It does what Mystery Men did for like the superhero genre. It does for like the Star Trek genre. It's fantastic. Magnolia, which I love. I think one of Paul Thomas Anderson's better ones.
I don't return to that one very often. Like I don't have it, but I find myself wanting to watch Boogie Nights a lot, because even though that is a heavy movie in a lot of ways, it is also so just watchable and funny in other parts. Whereas Magnolia is just kind of, I just remember it as so heavy throughout.
It is really heavy and like really long, but I think it's like one of Tom Cruise's best performances in there.
Oh yeah.
Man,
that's a tough one to watch though, because he's so unlikable. But
that's why it's such a great performance. I
love me some Tom Cruise too. I realize this is just me telling me all the people I love.
I watched every movie that this person put out. I watched every movie that this person.
Eventually, I had to kind of stop, but I never quite did that with Tom Cruise. But I do. I don't do it anymore. But there was especially a chunk of time where I really, really dug what he was doing, and that was around there. Talented Mr. Ripley, I saw, but not right away.
Angela's Ashes, Fantasia, and The Hurricane.
Ooh, The Hurricane. I had a big Bob Dylan phase in maybe like 2005, and Bob Dylan wrote a song about the hurricane, right? To try to help his cause, and I saw that movie around that time in 2005, and very into it.
I've been through this list probably a dozen times in my since 1999. And every time I go through it, I'm like, yeah, this is the greatest year of film in my life. Like, even their schlock is good schlock. I don't know. It's good. It's a good year.
I'll have to do 94 one of these times. I like a lot of those movies, but in terms of just the remembering the year and the watching stuff, I think I remember 1999 more for the things we talked about, because that was the year. Remember we did... So Palmer's Pick started, first episode in early January, and then by the end of the year, and we did like the Blair Witch thing, and I think we did a little, one of our friends did a school project on how U2's music was involved in our circle of friends. So there's this kind of bunch of stuff we all made as a group and that various people were on. So I remember all those things so much more, and I remember at the end of the year, you and I made compilation tapes for people of the stuff that they were in on VHS with like a little red sleeve. And so I remember these movies, but I actually that year more than any other was so filled with just like that making stuff that's I think I remember more.
Well, I think I guess my theory on why that is we were in the middle of living through 99, right? So we would not have realized how influential that year was.
Oh, yeah.
Because, we would have been a few years back, using stuff from a few years back. And, 94 is, the year of the independent film, right?
Right, yeah. And for me, The Crow came out, and then I started to make The Crow. And really, but, Pulp Fiction and, just a bunch of stuff like that.
I just really look at 99 as, the quality of films being put out and the variety of films being put out, especially compared to stuff like Hollywood now. It's just shit. Yeah. So.
Yeah. That's a good year. I can't argue. There's some favorites amongst those of mine, too. Do any that really stand out? You're like, oh, I know we highlighted a few, but When you first think 1999, what do you think? Like, oh, that movie.
Fight Club is like number one. Yeah. The Matrix, Sixth Sense. Actually, we must have skipped over it. The Green Mile came out that year too.
Oh, really? Yeah, I didn't see that. I've actually still never seen that. I've still never seen Shawshank Redemption. Like, I got a lot of work to do.
Oh my goodness. You're killing me.
The one time I tried to watch that, I think was in 94 or 5, and I was just not emotionally. Like, the first scene came on, it was even only on TBS, and so I knew it wasn't going to be too brutal, but just the opening scenes of, like, you could hear these prisoners crying or something. I was like, no, I can't. So I still haven't had the courage to go back.
Oh man, you gotta watch it. Like,
well, if nothing else, in my Stephen King obsession, it's going to come up.
Oh, that's true. That's very true.
My new Stephen King obsession.
I'm glad that you're on the Stephen King obsession.
Yeah, that's right. Because you were telling me you had also started at the beginning and worked your way through, and you're up to what now?
I'm on Lisey's Story, which that's in the mid 2000s, I think.
I never even heard of that one. Wow.
And it actually, I'm really impressed with it. Let me see here. Here we go. Lisey's Story. This came out in 2006, so that's where I am.
Oh wow!
In so my like Stephen King,
30 years into the career.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow. Oh my God! And you said it's taken you about 3 years, right?
Yeah, I've been working on it for a while, like a long while.
Do you break away and come back to it, or you just kind of
no?
Stick with it?
I've been going from one Stephen King novel to the next Stephen King novel.
That's amazing. Oh, I love it.
It's so and I've done them all on audio.
Yeah, so, that's how I've been doing that too.
Which is really, I mean, and even he will argue that's the way to go.
Oh, really?
So,
that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't argue that's the way to go. I say that's the way to go, but he loves the audiobook format. He loves that idea. And I love that he fights to keep them unabridged on audio.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you don't want
I mean, you're getting the Stand and It. It is so good.
I know I have all these iconic things, and a lot of them come quickly in his career. So it's like, oh wow,
yeah.
I did do The Shining earlier, and actually then I did Doctor Sleep shortly thereafter. So I'm going to skip The Shining this time just so that I can keep, or hear a new story, because that's the only, those two are the only I would need to skip. But
the 80s I think are way more prolific than the 90s, in my opinion, as far as his stuff goes. Like I mean, the 80s, there's so much that, I mean, even with him personally, because he cleans up partway through the 80s, and but like Cujo, and which he doesn't even remember writing.
Oh, that's I remember
that's the joke, and
he's like, but I like it.
I like it. I just don't remember it, because that was like the height of his like drug days, and he picked the Dark Tower series back up in the 80s. It came out. The Stand. I think The Stand came out in the 80s. Yeah, there's so much good stuff that comes, like, that he writes in the 80s. That's just so amazing. So, but yeah, it's such a fun journey. I'm excited.
I've been enjoying it so far.
Yeah,
and I'm so excited to have someone to talk about it with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to get you my flash drive that has all that stuff.
Oh,
on
yeah, because I've been getting them through the libraries and stuff, and I think I have The Stand, which would be next after. After
and there's
Shining,
there's two versions of The Stand. There's like an original version of that. I think I have both of them.
Oh.
There's an original version of that, and then there's like, he did an updated version of The Stand, which then they recorded a new audiobook of that. And
do you have a preference?
I think that I like his updates just because he does a good job when he updates it. Unlike, like Lucas,
doesn't
who's
like
just
call attention to itself, or
it really doesn't. If anything, you just get more story. So, but yeah, man, The Stand is a good one.
That's what I've always heard. Yeah. Oh, shoot. I just realized how long we've been going. It's a long time. And then I also realized that I wanted to you saw Ghostbusters and you wanted to. Oh, no. I don't know.
I mean, when we start talking about, like, when we start getting some kind of format hammered out, like, we can talk about Ghostbusters. Like, it was good. Like,
should we save it? Oh, you did like it, though?
I liked it. Like, as one of my friends put it, he's like, you're like the only person on the planet, I guess, that liked it. But I found other reviews. I just don't buy into the whole. Really, when it boils down, like, people can't handle there being girl Ghostbusters. I think that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And I found a review that basically it summed up everything that I was feeling about it. Just that it's not going to be a timeless classic like the original Ghostbusters. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's a good movie on its own. So
yeah, oh, that's good. I'm a big fan of each one of those women, and I like most of Paul Feig's movies. And so I was just like,
yep.
So just kind of dismayed when I was seeing little clips, and I was like, oh, this doesn't seem like it should. As funny as it should be. So I want to like it. So I guess if I want to like it and you did like it, that's probably a good sign that I will enjoy it.
Yeah, it was good, you know, like all of them were hilarious and they all got their own time and they all got to like develop as characters on their own, you know. A lot of analysis on the original Ghostbusters, like Winston, like, just kind of gets thrown in. And if you know, like, the backstory, like, that character was supposed to essentially, it's not confirmed, but the consensus is that that part was written for Eddie Murphy.
Oh, and then, yeah, that makes sense.
As time went on, like, it started to become like the Bill Murray movie. Like, and if you really look back on the original Ghostbusters, like, it is like the Peter Venkman show, who just has like, he's like leading his friends through this thing and he's very opportunistic. And so that character, like Winston's character, just kept getting whittled down to the point that they knew they couldn't. And Eddie Murphy at that time was blowing up in his career. So they couldn't give this like small bit part to Eddie Murphy. He wouldn't even want it.
Yeah.
So that's when they gave it to, who's that? Ernie Hudson.
Ernie Hudson, yeah. I like Ernie Hudson. Mostly because The Crow, but for anything I've really seen him in, I just dig that guy.
Yeah, and he's great as like Winston is great for the like little bit that he gets to be Winston is awesome. So, but like then this review that I read it's so accurate because he's like, it's not any one of them. It's about all of them. And so, which I think that in a sense, then that they are doing that better than the original Ghostbusters, where it was just about Peter Venkman, you know. So
they're kind of direct. I know they're not related in any way. That movie, but is it like Kristen Wiig? Is she like the Bill Murray? And it just seemed to, especially like with Kate McKinnon, she looked kind of like Egon. Is there kind of that character archetype?
I think that would be the breakdown that I would associate it. So like Kristen Wiig is Venkman, and Melissa McCarthy is Dan Aykroyd, and Kate McKinnon is Egon, and then
Leslie Jones.
Yeah, geez, man, is she fantastic. But she like. You get to see her like outside and how she becomes a Ghostbuster, as opposed to like Ernie Hudson is just like, if there's a steady paycheck involved, I'll believe anything you want. Right. You know, like that's his like that's your first introduction to him. You know, and that is essentially how they try to. But that's really about where the similarities end. Is like where you get that initial impression. Because I mean, Kristen Wiig is not like she is a little bit of a hornball, I guess, but not in the sense that Peter Venkman was, and she's not opportunistic, and she's it's its own movie, and just really, there's so much exposition there. You know how like in the original Ghostbusters, like they're like chasing a ghost blindly through a library, and then that jumps to they have the containment unit and the Ecto-1 and their proton packs and the traps and everything. All you don't get to see the jump in between them chasing a ghost around the library. to them having all that stuff. And this, like, you get the exposition of like how their equipment evolves over time and how they slowly get these things put together. You know, I just like it. It was just great.
Oh, that's awesome. And if they're going to remake it rather than just rebooting things the way that a lot of things are, where it's really, you don't add anything new. It's not really for a new audience. You know what? I didn't see it, but like there need to be a Point Break remake. And,
right.
And in this, where it's like you have it and you're remaking it with an all female cast and comedians who are in the prime of their career, at least two of them, and the other two maybe more up and coming, but are all just unbelievably talented and in their own right. And then to put them all in one movie with the guy that kind of specializes in making these sort of female ensemble comedies.
Yeah.
And then it's like a movie for, I'm guessing, like for like, like little girls up to young women, to just like it's a new thing for new people. You know, we've got
absolutely
our Ghostbusters from the 80s.
And that's like that was another thing this review said, was just like you can always go back to the original Ghostbusters if that's what you're looking for. Right. So I told Ash after I saw it, if you're gonna do a there's certain ways you should do a reboot, and if you're gonna reboot something that has such a cult following and that is so near and dear to your heart, you have to, you can't just make that again, right? You have to make something new to try to, you're not trying to get the same spirit. You're trying to rekindle that spirit, right? So it should pay homage, which it did, arguably too much. It paid homage. There's just... every scene has some kind of homage to the original Ghostbusters, in some way, shape, or form. But it does that very well. It's its own movie. It does that very well. People complain about the computer generated stuff. If they would have had the capability to do computer generated effects in the 80s when they made the original Ghostbusters, they would have. I'm getting tired of people saying oh, they use too much computer stuff. That's just the times we live in.
Yeah.
You're not going to get away from it. And I love now that there's this resurgence of practical effects, so that when you have somebody that takes the risk on doing practical effects, you can really enjoy it. Because if we go back to the 80s when all there was practical effects, there was the majority of shitty practical effects compared to really good ones. Stuff. You know what I mean? And there's still really good computer generated stuff that happens. So
it just doesn't you just can't tell.
Yeah.
Usually
exactly.
In the best case scenario, you don't think, oh, that's computer bullshit.
Yeah. So, and that I will always defend practical effects, just because I think that there is a visual, if that texture exists in the real world, your brain knows if it really exists, right?
Yeah.
Reach out and touch that thing, or if it just is fabricated. But yeah, I liked it. Totally liked it.
Awesome.
But so that's a long walk for a short drink.
That's the inaugural episode. Is that the right term? Inaugural.
Yeah.
Does that mean it's only once a year though?
No, that would be annual.
Annual. Yeah. Okay. The first of what we hope will be
there's
many.
There's one more thing that's really important that we need to do now.
What's that?
Fuck.